Okay, just so it looks like a little confusion, it's not confusion. Um, We have a honorary mayor for the opening of this council meeting, so. Yeah, Mayor Lopez, open the meeting, yeah. Yep.
Good evening and welcome to the Lompoc City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 21st, 2017 at 18:30. The council is reconvening from a closed session that began at 1800. My name is Chris Lopez. Madam Clerk, could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Vega.
Here.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Present.
Councilmember Osborne.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem James Mosby.
Present.
Honorary Mayor Chris Lopez.
Here.
Mayor Bob Lingle.
Here.
City Attorney, do we have any report from closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we had a conference with labor negotiators that had the discussion, and there's no reportable action.
Thank you. Everyone, please rise and join Pastor Bernie Federman in an invocation.
Thank you, Mayor. Gracious God, you are good to us beyond what we deserve. The freedoms we enjoy, the beauty around us. I ask you to help us to train our eyes to see your goodness, to see your presence and not your absence. These past 2 weeks, with the tragic passing of police officer and 10-year Marine Miguel Grijalva, we witnessed your goodness and presence through the hearts and generosity of so many in our community, reaching out to our police, to Miguel's family, sending notes, lining the streets, sending flowers, making donations, and attending his memorial service. Loving and caring hearts impacted others. These acts of kindness remind us all that we can make an impacting difference and bring your love and grace to others and extend your heart and your hands to our neighbors. They truly become your hearts and hands. We remember tonight Miguel's family and our first responders who still feel this heavy weight of his passing. He served our country and our community so well, and we thank you for his life. We pray for others who have recent date have lost loved ones or are dealing with medical, mental, or financial difficulties and uncertainties. Bring them your peace and your grace. I pray for your presence in this building tonight, in meetings, opened or closed, in blessings of decisions made here. For no one in this room holds all the answers. We not have all the wisdom that we need, but collectively together, listening to you and listening to the wisdom of others, we can make great decisions. In our community, where there's darkness, send your light. Where there's bitterness and hatred, send your grace. Where there's crime and violence and vandalism, send righteousness that allows us to see these people, for them to be exposed, and for law enforcement to do their job. Be with those who protect us and serve us so well, our police, our fire, our military, especially those downrange and in harm's way. Prosper our local businesses and give them favor to increase. Be with our schools and those who teach our young people, and watch over our children. We ask you tonight for our mayor, our city manager, our council members and staff, and all who speak from this podium, that you would give them your grace, your goodness, and your wisdom. For all these things and your wonderful bounty for us, we pray. Thank you so much, O God. Amen.
Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
of
States of
America,
America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On March 18, 2017, Mayor Lingle, Councilmember Vega, and Osborne presented proclamations to Chuck and Barbara Arnold, Kara Ann Johnson, and the family of Ronald K. Fairbanks in honor and recognition of their contributions to the Lompoc community.
Come on up here, Mayor Lopez. You know, I just want to, if those of you that don't know what happened, the Rotary Club of Lompoc, that does fabulous things for this community, annually has a wine tasting and auction. And one of the items that we auctioned off was Mayor for a Day. Sergeant Lopez bid on that, and we were very fortunate to have him give the winning bid. Just for the information, the winning bid was more than our council members make in a month. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Mayor Lopez, I just want to say how honored we are to have you, especially in your uniform, you and everyone else in the armed services, for everything you do for our country. It is really an honor to have you here today. And I know you have your friend DZ here. DZ spent the day with us on Thursday. Hopefully you had a good time. Hopefully you learned a bit about what it takes to run a city. I know we took him over the water treatment plant, and it's pretty amazing, I think you'll agree, it's pretty amazing what work has to happen by our city employees to get a glass of water. And we think nothing of it when we sit in a restaurant and sit and maybe drink a couple sips out of it and let that water then go down the drain. It's a lot of work that goes into just producing a glass of water, so, and along with the other things. So, it's my honor to present you. This is presented to Chris Lopez, Mayor for a Day, March 21st, 2017, for his generous donation to the Lompoc Rotary Club. And Chris, congratulations.
All right, thank you.
That's fair for you.
Real quick, I just want to say thank you to Mayor Bob Lingo and everyone that allowed the opportunity for me to have this. It was an amazing experience. I know myself and my friend DZ, we had a great time exploring the city of Lompoc. There's a lot of hard work that goes on and makes this city run and look as beautiful as it does. I had a great time. Everyone was so nice. Everyone that we met and came in contact with were just great personalities. So I had a really, really wonderful visit. I wish I could say more about more people and everyone that I remember their names who I met. It was just so many people, so it was a great time, and it was a lot of fun. So it's a great city to be in, and great part. I'm very lucky to be stationed at Vandenberg Air Force Base and serve my country here so close in proximity to a great city. And thank you, Mayor Bob, and everyone else that is here today. I know it's my first time ever doing this, so I'm a little rusty.
Sure. Okay, and Chris, if I could do one last thing, if you'll indulge us, I'd like you to stand up there one more, sit in the chair, and then get a council with the entire, or picture with the entire council.
Absolutely.
Okay, so. Yeah, oh, no, you can do that. I'll make it. to Donate for Life California Month. Whereas organ, tissue, marrow, and blood donation are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need, and the spirit of giving and decisions to donate are not restricted by age or medical condition. And whereas more than 118,000 individuals nationwide and more than 21,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list. On the average, 22 people die each day while waiting due to the shortage of donated organs. And with the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanics, African American communities. Whereas more than 600,000 units of blood per year are needed to meet the need in California, and at any given time, 6,000 patients are in need of volunteer marrow donors, and millions of lives each year are saved and healed by donors of organs, tissues, marrow, and blood. And whereas a single individual donation of heart, lung, liver, kidney, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives. Donations of tissues can save and heal the lives of up to 50 others, and a single blood transfusion can help 3 people in need. And whereas over 13 million Californians have signed up with a state-authorized Donate Life California Donor Registry to ensure their wishes of the organs, eyes, and tissue donors are honored by signing on to the Donate for Life Donor Registry, where applying and renewing their driver's license and ID cards in the state of California Motor Vehicle Department. Now therefore, I, Bob Lingle, Mayor, City of Lompoc, California, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2017 as DMV Donate Life California Month in the City of Lompoc, and encourage all Californians to check yes when applying and or renewing their driver's license or ID cards, or by signing up at www.donatelifecalifornia.org, or where vida california.org. And I want to thank you very much for everything you guys do.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Would you like to say a few words?
All right, my name is Christian Kazianka, and I think Donate Life's a wonderful thing. My mother was an organ donor, and when she passed away, she was able to save countless lives, and now she's known as a hero in death. So I beseech all of you to check yes, become organ donors, and save a life, and let your legacy live on through other people. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Riley Wallace, and this is Donalia Kazienka. My grandma, his mom, was an organ donor, and as he said, she saved many lives. She donated her corneas, her cartilage, her blood, her tissue, which saves cancer patients who need skin grafts, and she helped a lot of people. And we get to let her legacy live on, which is really cool. So, check yes on the donor box.
Okay.
Thank you for proclaiming Donate Life Month in April. I'm not the recipient of their family, but I ended up getting a kidney 2 years ago from a lady, a nurse at Cottage Hospital, who died suddenly, and her family had also checked, or she had checked the pink dot on her driver's license, so I ended up getting a new kidney. I got involved with Donate Life because I knew nothing about kidney donations. So one thing, just so your council has, or Stacy has, my contact information. If you ever have someone who suddenly goes, I've just heard I need a kidney, I need a heart, I need something, I'm a source you guys can use. I'm Scott Burns. I live in Santa Barbara. I have a niece who was going to show up here, but I don't see her. She's a veterinarian in town, so we kind of know what we're doing, or at least she does. I was 2 years ago, I was at Santa Cruz Island, sitting on a friend's sailboat when the Santa Barbara Harbor Patrol came, and yelled to me, "Mr. Burns, we have a kidney for you." So that was kind of fun, made the local paper, and I got a kidney the next morning. As they were mentioning, some people ask, how old can I be and still donate a kidney? The oldest living donor was 95 years old when she donated her kidney. She was in Scotland and said, "I was just sitting around watching the telly. I thought I could just give it to somebody else." The oldest deceased donor for a kidney was 105 years old. So when people think, well, I'm too old, you're not too old. So anyway, thank you very much. We appreciate this. Most of the cities and counties in Santa Barbara, in Southern California will be at a run walk in Fullerton at the end of the month, where we will be promoting organ donations nationwide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
if you could indulge me, I just wanted to add on to that, and I've shared this before each year that I've been here. I had a brother 17 years ago who passed away while he was waiting on a donation list, so it's very near to my heart. I do have it marked on my driver's license and encourage people to do that, one donor can save 10 or more lives as a result of different things that might be harvested. And certainly, when my time's done here on earth, I'm not going to need it anymore. So please be generous, and you can make an impact on other generations to come. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for the record, I just checked my license. There's a little pink dot on it, so. Okay. Chamber of Commerce. Amy? Amber?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Amber Wilson. I am the new president and CEO for the Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce. So this is my first time here presenting, so thank you for having me. I believe you were all provided the report of the quarter, or the half a year we're talking about, which is from July 1st to December 31st of 2016. I think you're all aware I wasn't here during that time, so I'm just going to highlight some things on the report and then talk about some things that we're focusing on now. So as far as visitor traffic, we had a total of 610 walk-in visitors. We mailed out 1,840 pieces of visitor material that was distributed to local hotels, tasting rooms, and other sites. We had a total of 768,106 website hits. And our top 5 downloads are listed here, with the top download being the Flower Tour map, and that amount is 1,758, which was a large number in comparison to the other downloads, which I found interesting. Our social media is listed down here, and to highlight that, we did 3 different campaigns boosting a couple of different programs. We did Old Town Market, we did wine tasting at Old Town Market, and then we boosted a free activities in Lompoc, which reached over 5,000 people. The most hits were almost 2,000, which was the free activities in Lompoc. Our Facebook likes were at 1,665, which is up 169 from the previous reporting cycle, and Visit Lompoc Valley has 1,031 likes. So now we are focusing on Old Town Market, which begins June 30th for 8 weeks. So it's June 30th with the last Friday being August 18th. And an exciting piece of that is that we were able to work with city staff to get that extended an hour. So in previous years, the time has been from 5 to 7, and now it's going to be from 5 to 8 p.m. each Friday. So I think that's going to benefit the community members, businesses, and just be an overall really positive addition. And we appreciate the city's support on that, because essentially the city sponsored that additional hour, offering staff to put barricades up and all the things that go along with that responsibility. So on the launch on June 30th, we have Lompoc High School's Alumni Car Cruise. On July 7th, we have Ag Night. July 14th is Performing Arts Night. July 21st is Open Streets, which is a new addition to Old Town Market. It's in a collaborative effort with the Lompoc Valley Community Healthcare Organization that promotes healthy lifestyles. So there's going to be additional street closure where people are going to be encouraged to come out and walk and ride their bike and whatever it is their favorite form of physical activity is. So that should be exciting. And then we have a few open dates. The last one will be August 18th, which is Public Safety Night, and we'll have the police department car crews on that evening with an additional closure as well. We just wrapped up Restaurant Week, and that was February 20th through the 27th, and it was a huge success. We had 19 participating restaurants with a total of close to 30,000 menu downloads. Everyone was really excited about it. I think the top restaurant, and I will leave names out, but I think they served over 400 Restaurant Week meals. So if you don't know what that is, that's participating restaurants either put one menu item or a 2-for-1 for $20.17 for 2017. So it's a good economic development tool to get folks into your business. A couple of changes that we have, our mixer schedules have been a little bit more consistent, so we've changed those to be the second and the fourth Thursdays from 5:30 to 7:30. So if you're interested in coming out to a chamber mixer, you can kind of mark your calendar and know when those dates are going to be. A date to note would be our annual dinner. It's going to be July 19th at the Dick Dewey Center. And then we are also extending the Small Business Day to Small Business Week. So it's going to be a whole week rather than just a Saturday, and it's going to be in a similar format to Restaurant Week. So we'll be putting out more information regarding that soon. And so from some of my goals and my very infancy state of the position, it is my desire to continue working with the city in tourism and economic development ventures. We're partnering closely with Explore Lompoc, and we're doing that to collaborative efforts on advertising so we can really get our name out there and get the most out of our budget. So an example of that, we just advertised, we collaboratively put together a $17,000 ad campaign in Sunset Magazine, and that it was in their California Visitors Guide. And so that cost to the chamber was only $8,500 versus $17,000 because we partnered with Explore Lompoc and we were able to have this big, beautiful, huge spread. So that's just an example of some of the things that we're doing to work with that organization. And then we're a part of the Economic Development Committee, and then I sit on the EVT, so those are some ways that we're working on economic development as well. So, and that's all I have.
Any questions for Amber? Ms. Osborne?
I realize you inherited the report, but I would like to see when you report out the number of advertising placements, there's just a number. I'd like to see where the ads were made, maybe a tear sheet, maybe how long the ads run to better explain the $12,000 that's been spent so that it's a better reflection of how that money was reflected. And then my second recommendation would be to make sure the numbers add up on the totals column. So the numbers are identical under item 8, and they shouldn't be.
Okay.
So one appears to be a monthly call out, and it's not monthly, and then the other one appears to be totals for your 6 month, and instead of being 106, 722, 63, it should be 153, 40, 616.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Just something to review, even though you inherited it, to make sure it's right.
Okay, fair
All right.
enough. Fair enough.
Thank you, though, for all of the work, and welcome.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a piece of business square away. We had we are scheduled to do, I believe right now, on a quarterly basis, a special transparency ad hoc meeting. We did our original transparency meeting with all council members. I believe that was in August, and then followed up in November with the first of the ad hoc meetings, and I believe that was Mayor Lingle and Councilmember Starbuck that served on that one. So it's been about 3 months, and if it's the desire of the council to continue, we wanted to do a selection of who would be the 2 members sitting in and what that date would be.
Well, since we went with Councilmember Starbuck and myself, because at that time, I believe you were Mayor Pro Tem. I believe you were.
No, I wasn't Mayor Pro Tem, it was just
Probably
you
most,
and I.
most senior, you're probably most senior. So I'd recommend it being Councilmember Vega and Councilmember Mosby for this one, if that's okay with the rest of the council.
Could, do you gentlemen have one day that works better than others? Would you want to do it on an off Tuesday, on a Thursday? I think we did the last one on a Thursday. I don't remember for sure.
What's your time? 6:30 at night? Is that what we're looking at?
That's
same time?
where we had scheduled the last one. It was at 6:30.
Yeah, I can do Tuesday or Thursdays at 6:30, it'd be fine.
Yeah, same thing with me. Tuesday preferably, but Thursday works also.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I was going to mention that the last transparency meeting that Mayor Lingle and myself sat on was on a Tuesday, August 9th.
And I believe it was about 2 hours.
Approximate.
Yeah.
Now, if I could ask the question here, we were planning on having these quarterly, right? If we're just assuming we're going to continue this on a quarterly
Well,
basis, or
I think
what?
after we go through,
No,
my
you-
opinion, after we go through one set where all of us sit on at least one, I think it should be reviewed to see what we're
Okay,
getting
because
at.
I think that we did it based on input from the public, and we haven't heard a lot lately. You know, I wasn't sure if maybe the meeting that you guys had was very beneficial and actually put something to rest, okay? It is a question, okay, depending on what the quality was of the meeting that you guys attended.
I'd made a mistake. The last one was 29 November. The whole council transparency where the council sat was on August 9th, but the last one that you and I sat on was the 29th of November.
Councilmember Mosby.
What, maybe 2 weeks, is that what you're thinking? Or when's our opening?
Look,
Because 2 weeks, we have another council meeting, right?
right.
So then we could do it on the Thursday after that.
Well, one of the questions is going to become right now whether that meeting in 2 weeks, right now we have some things we could do on closed session. I don't think we have any open session items scheduled right now for the April 4th meeting.
We haven't had council request time yet. Just kidding, just kidding.
I can't, it's too late to submit, to establish an item for the 4th. So, we could make that a topic of that evening's meeting and just have it with the entire board with the entire council as well.
And I think they should suffer through it themselves. No.
Yeah,
that would be
I
fine.
think that's what you guys want, and I'm thinking, to have some other input here, Patrick, or is it necessary? Should we have it as a full council? You know, like I say, I think the impact probably was on a positive mode. I haven't heard any complaints lately, you know. Whatever you guys did to explain transparency and how we do things to the public.
Yeah, I think the body of the last ad hoc, there were concepts and ideas shared. There were some specific proposals made, those things that involved an investment of some money we were holding over to the budget cycle. So for instance, it was suggested maybe we have a monitor with a rolling screen. It sort of gives city calendar updates in the lobby, which is one of those things that we'll bring forward with it's a suggestion we'll bring forward with the budget.
Well, it's my opinion that we should probably go through at least one cycle and then reevaluate. In my opinion, the first meeting was productive. It was mainly one individual that brought forward suggestions, and some of them were some things we can do, some of them were just outside the realm. But I'd like to see us go through one cycle with us, and then we can reevaluate whether we want to continue it. We may not, you're right, Councilmember Vega, we may not need to do it anymore. We may have addressed all the issues at that point.
Yeah, I think you might have addressed and quelled anybody's questions, but again, I'm all for it, but I just don't know what our agenda would be, okay, based on your last meeting, okay?
It may be a very quick meeting. It may
Okay.
be a quick
I
meeting.
got you.
if no one shows up.
So if an off Tuesday is the preferred night, if I heard that correctly,
I think that's what they said.
then April 11th might be the next.
I have council chambers reserved right now, the 11th and the 25th for I'll bring it up later, a special council meeting I'm going to be calling on homelessness. So I'll be talking
For both those nights?
one and or the other. So if you want to take it on the 11th, I could do the 25th. I was gonna.
Or the other way around.
I'm
How
open
about
there, too.
April 25th then, or you're not sure yet? Do you want to wait till we do yours?
Yeah, let's wait. And I'll get the date and we can decide on this one later then, but we'll do it on an alternate Tuesday then. Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I think it's imperative that we go ahead and continue with these transparency ad hocs. At the one that Mayor Lingle and I sat on, there was 12 items. I've read them before. I'm not going to repeat them, but they're all good items. And if anybody would like a copy, I'm going to go ahead and leave them with the city clerk sometime this week. She'll be able to put them together, and I think some follow-through on some of these. Some of them were ideas that the council's had. Some of them were great input from public, and, I mean, let's keep moving with it.
Yeah, I think that would be great to get some of your notes if possible, so we can know where we're going. Otherwise, we're shooting blind again, starting all over.
Okay. City Manager, anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, again, my appreciation to the California Highway Patrol, Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office, and the City of Santa Maria Police Department for their support while we were both grieving and honoring Officer Miguel Grijalva. They stepped in the gap for us and handled patrols and dispatching so that we could free up our officers to, as I said, grieve and honor their fallen brother, and also their attendance and support at the funeral was touching and honoring of Officer Grijalva. So just wanted to express my my thanks to all those departments. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Any questions for the city?
Oh, I'm
Councilmember
sorry, I
Mosby.
have one more piece of business. Thank you. My apologies. We had added to a late hour addition to the, under the city manager report, the president's proposed budget came out, and included in that was a proposal to eliminate the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG dollars. And so the question for the council, and the home dollars, the home investment partnerships, home ownership. And the question was whether you wanted to authorize letters to be sent to express opposition to the to that elimination out of the budget, and that would be authorizing the mayor to sign letters that would be sent to the United States Senate and the House of Representatives.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I'm kind of receiving the letter at the last minute here, but I have a couple of suggestions that would probably give it a little more oomph than the form letter that shows here. We, in the last few years as a city, have done very well, I think, with the management of our CDBG funds. Could we add the enclosures of some of the actions we've taken to make it a more effective letter? And by that I mean, obviously, our housing, our contract compliancy, what we've done with capital improvement, what the nonprofits receive through the Human Services Commission. I mean, these are forms that we all have already. They would bolster the what is in the letter.
Well, we provided the letter just because that was immediately available. We were trying to make a posting deadline, a public posting deadline, as all of this became known on Friday. We have drafted letters that aren't just fill in the blank additions of this, but rather do personalize it from our city. I haven't gotten into the same detail that you described there, and we certainly can if that's what you'd like to see.
I would think so, because I mean, we can show the accountability for the funds now. I mean, we can actually show measurable results of what we've done with the money. You know, so I mean, it would just probably add more oomph to the postage stamp.
Sure thing.
And I agree. I think other than just the form letter, because I believe if this is a form letter, they're probably going to be receiving a similar letter, almost identical from a lot of other cities. So I think adding a little bit special would be nice.
Sure.
Anything else on the letter? Okay, then
Well, I wanted to see whether or not the majority of you
Right.
were wanting
So do you
that
want
to be the case.
Do you want a voice vote on this, or just let's do a voice vote. So make the motion.
I'll make the motion that we go ahead. I'd like to see the letter before it goes, please, but I would make a motion that we go ahead and send a letter to our senator and our representative, you know, endorsing, you know, the continuation of the CDBG program.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. Okay. Anything else, Mayor? City Manager?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, so we are going to move on to oral.
I had something.
Yo, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If I could just comment on your March 10th, your city manager's weekly report and page 17, the water report, that is a good job. And those people in the public who want to see what's going on with our water, I believe Eric Erlin put it together on there, but it identifies how much water has gone through the Narrows, and you get roughly, 25,000 acre-feet of water have come down that river. And again, this is March 10th's report, but it's a really, really good, thorough report, showed where several of our wells have been really coming up. So I'd just say that, you know, stuff like that in your report, your weekly report is really good information. I want to thank you for putting that together.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Move on to public comment on the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items that are generally considered routine and will be approved by one motion and a vote of the council unless a council member wishes to pull an item. Does any council member wish to pull an item? Okay, I would entertain a motion then.
I'll move to accept the consent calendar.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes. That's why we pay the city manager, or the city attorney so much. Before we vote, do we have any public comment on the consent calendar? Okay, so we have no public comment. We'll close public comment on the consent calendar, and we will, no further discussion, we will vote on that. That passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, staff presentations, comments? None, okay. Oral communication, this is your opportunity to speak to us for up to 3 minutes on any item that before the council. Is Mr. Chavez here by any chance? You're Mr. Chavez. Okay, this is your time to come up and Sure. Would you like to come and speak for him?
Okay, tell me your name. Just tell me your name. Hi, my name is Isla Magliotti. I help out with Josh. I work for a program called Lighthouse. They're based through San Luis. His name is Josh Chavez. He's having a couple surgeries coming up, and he's just looking for some help with maybe a couple nights of motel. His uncle is going to be taking him to LA, and he needs a place to stay, and then he also needs a place to stay until he gets out of surgery.
Okay, so Mr. Chavez contacted me, and I put out a couple of requests to a couple of churches in town and have not heard back. So Mr. Chavez is going down to LA for some surgeries. I believe you need about $150 for 2 nights in a hotel down there. And then he'll have his surgery. So what I'm doing is asking if you want to give your telephone number that someone could contact you.
Let me give your number.
Yeah, 805-907-5117.
Okay, let me write that down again. 805
907-5117.
5117. Okay, so if any hotel operators that have contacts down the LA area that could help this gentleman out, or if there's anyone from the community that would like to contact him and donate $20, $25 to help this gentleman out, he'd appreciate it and I'd appreciate it. Again, his phone number is 805-907-5117. And Mr. Chavez, when is your surgery scheduled?
The 31st of March.
31st of March. So if anyone can help him out, he'd appreciate it. So, okay, thank you.
Okay,
And good
thank
luck to
you.
you. Anyone else? Seeing no one rise, we're going to close our communication and bring it back to the public hearing. Okay. Item number 5 is a public hearing and adoption of ordinance numbers 1632 parentheses 17 and 1633 parentheses 17. And this is, it doesn't look like Chief Ladapow, but.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and the public. I am not Chief Ladapow. I am the Fire Marshal, Dina Paschke. I'm representing the fire chief both on the fire side and the building side this evening. And I have a fairly brief staff report for part of the public hearing. Before you, there were a couple links with the agenda that had a couple of ordinances. The first one, 1632, is the fire ordinance. The second one, 1633, is the building ordinance, which were introduced by first reading on February 21st, 2017, and at that time, the City Council directed staff to set the required public hearing for their adoption on March 21st, this evening. The California Fire Code and the California Building Code are both adopted by the state by order of the California Legislature. Once adopted by the state, those standards have the force of the law and take effect 180 days after publication. The effective date for the 2016 edition of the Fire Code and Building Code was January 1st, 2017. Cities and counties throughout the state are required to enforce the 2016 code provisions on and after January 1st of that year, 2017. Cities and counties have the authority to modify those standard provisions to more stringent standards through local amendments. We have a government code section that also requires a public hearing to be held after the introduction of an ordinance that adopts the codes by reference. Public notice of that hearing must be published once a week for 2 successive weeks. Our proposed ordinance amend the Lompoc Municipal Code so the model codes adopted and published by the state are thereby referenced as LMC. The purpose of the California Fire Code and California Building Code, which I may reference as CFC and CBC, is to establish the minimum standards necessary to protect health, safety, and general welfare of the public by regulating and governing the safeguarding of life and property from fire and explosions, hazards arising from storage, handling and use of hazardous substances, materials, and devices, and from conditions hazardous to life or property in the occupancy of buildings and premises in the city of Lompoc, the city, providing for the issuance of permits and the collection of some fees. Staff has reviewed the mandatory codes along with the amendments adopted in 2013 and have determined the only changes required are related to sequencing of the city-adopted code references. The changes are due to expansion of certain sections with the CFC and CBC and elimination of overlapping requirements. The proposed amendments and the deletions to the CFC are those necessary to eliminate the conflicts existing with the LMC, our municipal code provisions. Consistent with the community risk reduction philosophy, we embrace and promote on a daily basis the Building and Safety Services section of the Fire Department plans on organizing and hosting a workshop to familiarize our citizens and customers with the building and fire codes of the requirements. Code cycles come every 3 years. We did a town hall kind of workshop for significant code changes in 2013. This time we're looking to expand it. We're proposing on the month of May to be declared Building and Safety Month. which would support the International Codes Council and Conference's national campaign to promote public awareness to help individuals and families and businesses understand what it takes to create a safe and sustainable structures. This would be an inaugural event, and we're looking to make it annual. So we're a little excited to get a program going on the building side. We tend to be so buried in code books and whatnot, we don't get to celebrate the idea and the spirit of why we do that work. Is when we do good work there, we don't see problems in the community or unsafe acts. This public hearing is pursuant to the government code, and for the adoption of the proposed ordinance must be published once a week for 2 successive weeks. Those postings have already been done in the newspaper and other publication, and both the Lompoc Record took place on March 5th and March 12th. For fiscal impacts, the recommendation actions will result in no direct financial impact to the city's general fund. The cost is to administer the CFC and the CBC are captured through the city's master fee schedule, permits, and the general plan review fees. As noted above, the implementation of the CFC and CBC is mandatory. We don't have a choice. By not adopting the CFC or the CBC in conformance with existing LMC provisions, we could create conflicts between the state-adopted version and the Lompoc Municipal Code. This conflict may have fiscal impacts to the city, which may not be able to be recovered through charges available through the city's master fee schedule. So in conclusion, we look to propose an adoption of this city. The Lompoc Fire Code is consistent with the fire department's mission. And a special note, if the council does not adopt the proposed ordinances, then by state law, the CFC and CBC as adopted by the state are applicable in Lompoc without the changes specific to the needs and the realignment for our municipal code. So that's our full staff report. There are a couple of ordinances that are attached to the staff report, and I'm available for any comment or questions.
Any questions or comments for Dina? Councilor Vega.
Dina, we have here this ordinance that showed that there were numerous changes, upon the first reading. And the chief explained that they were just cleanups. And I'd like to ask that, the original set of ordinances be provided whenever we have to make changes that regard cleanup or any amendments that are made to the ordinance, because we never got to see any of that. What we were told, it was just generally cleaned up, and we just made it conform. But I think for us to make a good decision, when we adopt things and we're responsible for adopting these things, I think we should see both sides of the picture. That was my point here. So I think that we should be able to see the other side before we move forward with adopting any of this. Because sometimes in retrospect, we come back and we say, oh, wow, we didn't know that. I think that by seeing both sides of the picture, it makes us make a better decision, and we move forward together.
Okay, I completely understand. From 2013's ordinance adoption, there were a number of changes that was adopted. This particular adoption is actually taking numbers. It's kind of interesting. It's like they add tabs and chapters in verse. So it's a living document. So all of these codes, fire codes specifically, they add more chapters as we get more restrictive. That's handed to us by the state. Last code adoption, where a section might have not have existed, the code might have ended at point 3. Now they've taken that chapter and verse to point 6. So our new adoption has to go, our amendment has to start at point 7. It's really minutia. But yeah, we're happy to give you the
No, I got you.
2013.
And I understand that. So basically you're telling me it's just categorizing them with new identifying numbers, so to speak. I guess what I'm asking is are we changing anything significantly that would allow more, the rules to be more stringent as far as the fire code based on the local ordinance? I mean, if there were any changes, I think we should know about those outside of any categories that we renumber these or we put these in different sections of the ordinance.
Specifically in this ordinance compared to 2013, there was one addition when we have electronic gates or specialized gates to get inside for not having an emergency response. Time is tissue for us for a medical or fire. Time is also property. So there is one option that we, instead of using just a fire department key or a special keypad that allows us in, there's also a click to enter. And that's used at other counties, such as Orange County, where you literally hit a radio, a certain radio, and cue the mic, essentially, and the gate opens. So it's a radio receiver as an option to the property owner. That didn't exist in the last ordinance.
And those are basically the only changes that you know of here in this
For,
proposal?
yes, and we're also talking, the building as well.
Yeah, and the building is a concern of mine also.
The building's actually pretty straightforward from our standpoint. The one thing, the Appendix J, you'll see some extra verbiage there. That's to get it in alignment with assistance from our Public Works Department. For grading purposes, Public Works spearheads that. Whereas the building code really references the building official. Well, we send our city engineer to check out the grading and the public right-of-ways. And so we make it reflective to who actually does those inspections. The other thing is that there's a floodplain verbiage in the building code. That is reflected because it's required by FEMA. And all of this, in the building code sections, we talk about, the building code talks about California Mechanical Code adopted. Well, the Lompoc Municipal Code doesn't call it that, so you have to cross-reference them back. And really all we're adjusting to that cross-reference is the date, the 2016 version versus that replaces the 2013. And we have to take it anyway because the state mandates it. Now the fire code in 2013, there was some additions that are already under play. Some of that, for instance, covers fireworks that the city council wanted to have the safe and sane sales. That's not clearly spelled out in the fire code book about having sales of fireworks in a community. So we make sure that we retain the right to make sure they have a permit, that they get an inspection, because we don't want people to sell safe and sane fireworks without having a permit, because they may not know that somebody slipped them fireworks that's not covered under safe and sane. And for instance, manufacturing fireworks isn't really clearly identified. If you take safe and sane and you modify those fireworks, you're technically manufacturing fireworks. We want to make sure that we watch out for that. Another section, which maybe seems less significant to some, for us it's quite important, is the photovoltaics. Solar is a big thing. It's been evolving and evolving and evolving. And what it does for fire-wise, we have to make sure we kind of ensure our real estate up there when we have to get on the roof, cut a hole, and do a ventilation, vertical ventilation. That solar, even at night in the moonlight, it's still live. It's still active. So we ask them for special labeling. How do we shut it off? We make sure that it says, hey, there's a solar up here. It's, it might be a non-moon night and we can't see it. Hopefully we could. And we also allow ourselves, you might ventilate on one side of the roof. If you need to escape, as you've probably seen some pretty bad YouTube videos, and get over the crest of the pitch of a roof, the safest side would be just on the other side of that main header. If it's all filled by solar, that works as a slide. So we allow ourselves 3 feet on the top pitch to make sure we can walk. Certain things like that we really watch out for some personal safety. And so, yeah, I'd say the fireworks and the photovoltaics, but those were amended in 2013. So we're just making sure that we have the same numbering system, and we didn't. What happens if you don't adjust your numbers and make it in a local ordinance, you essentially, if the numbers don't align, you could wipe out code that's already there that you have to ensure that the state is being regulated. So it's really kind of realigning the cards, if you will.
The other question I have here is the powers of arrest when you're on scene. Okay, say you, and this, I'm asking these questions so people understand that we're actually vetting this, okay, a little bit more than we maybe have been in the past. Say in this makeup scenario here, you find someone that's, let's bring up fireworks, okay? Someone's doing something illegal, they're non-compliant, there's no police officer on scene. Is that something new that gives you arrest powers, okay? Or the power to, okay? I've seen this in the ordinance, and I was just wondering, is that brand new to you guys, or have you always had that ability to arrest as far as the fire service is concerned, or is that basically like you have police powers other than citizens arrest powers?
It's interesting you bring in the fireworks, because that could, for felony-wise, it's more in line with the arson and fire investigations and detaining a suspect on scene. It allows us, if we've had Penal Code 832, which is arrest and seizure, course, and we have that deemed by our fire chief that we have those powers. So it's specific to who gets that power, that we can have that authority to do so for our own protection, for the protection of the citizens. It's not new. It spells out specifically more who can do so, who's empowered to do so. But they can't do it without having the fire chief sign off and the mandated post requirements, the police officer safety training. So it's not new in this ordinance. It clarifies and brings back what 2013 had.
So some of the verbiage is just a clarification, is what you're saying?
Right. Some of what the fire code and the building code does is they leave things pretty generic. And then in your city, you don't know if you have a mayor or you have the head of the fire district. Maybe you're a district, so are you a municipality, district, county? They want you to clarify what is that specific position at your jurisdiction. So you make it more specific. So it's also easier to attest to in court. And maybe our city attorney that gets in his world, I stay clear of that sometimes. But that's some of it's what it's for.
Thank you, Dina, for that explanation.
Thank you, Councilman Vega. Councilmember Mosby.
Is what we have, the 2013 edition is posted on the city's website, right? And I was looking, as for an example, 105.7.19 on the landscaping. I didn't see that in there. I spent a couple hours trying to cross-reference back and forth with the 13 code, which you have here, and 16 state code. And there seems to be a few extra changes. Is that 105.7.19? Is that a new one?
0.19, additional construction permits.
This is basically the landscaping. It's to install or alter landscaping. So if grandma's planting her daisies over here, because that's installing landscaping.
If you take it at face value as landscaping, I would say, why are we discussing that in the fire code? Because you're absolutely right. We don't want to be the gardener police, for sure. We have a weed abatement program that helps with our community safety. The rest of that sentence is hazardous vegetation in the wildland-urban interface. As we progress and build out in our annexes along the, say, the Burton Mesa Chaparral area, that's where we're referring to. So if we have a vegetation management program in place that makes sure we have natives, that we have fuel separations, 100-foot of clearance away from houses, when we have things like the Mesa fire that are going to slam up against our community, we have a vegetation management that we can enforce. If somebody wants to change that management program, they need to come and talk to us. It makes them come back into the loop.
But that's a new section though, right?
And that's consistent with there's a whole, which we didn't choose to adopt, a wildland urban interface code. We did not choose that code in its entirety. We chose a little section that had a wildland urban interface to protect kind of our borders as our community changes.
And I guess what I'm getting at is, there's one that in cross-referencing, I see that. You didn't recognize that as well, and as well as the plan check and field inspection is also another one. And then I think 109.3.5 is also something new. And what I'm getting at is, when I went through this, I spent a couple hours trying to cross-reference back and forth, and I actually came to the city manager and asked if maybe we could get some assistance so we could see what 13 was, city's 13, and what you're wanting to do here, and be able to translate it back to the state so we could see how much we're adding on. Because as I investigated, I found that there's a lot more than I thought there was. It wasn't, you referenced it was minor changes. It seemed to me there was a little bit more than minor changes. And I don't read this the same way. I didn't have a chance to get by the city attorney, but the way I look at it here, it says right here, landscaping, irrigation, field modification, to install or alter landscaping and irrigation. So I guess that should be, as you said right there, it's the Burton Mesa area or something so maybe that should be diagrammed a little differently or written a little differently, because technically if grandma's planting a daisy, that's installing landscaping.
It does specifically say in the wildland urban interface, and that is a defined definition and area. And the city itself we can even post high fire hazard areas like we have up at Beatty Park. That would be more of an interface where we have houses right up against where fuel models are, especially with some type of hillside where we have Magalito with pushing winds coming down fire-wise.
And I can see what you're getting, but again, what I'm getting at is that there's more to it than just a couple changes. And then reading the 2016 code, if you go to 109.4, the violation of penalties aspect, it's actually got blanks. The state code allows you blanks. you don't have to necessarily have it posed as a misdemeanor. It could be an infraction. Could be something less than the misdemeanor. Because I think the kind of, if somebody's installing a toilet, you could actually get a misdemeanor charge and 6 months in jail for installing a toilet if you didn't pull a permit.
The code leaves blanks so that we can fill them in, and as I mentioned earlier, for our jurisdiction, since we're not a district, we're a city, we come in and fill in the blanks with what applies specifically. We make it Lompoc's code. That's what we try to do on those sections. As far as having any type of misdemeanor of a toilet, the city attorney's office would probably be a really good filter for making sure something like that never went out.
But you know, if you read as it says here, if you shall erect, install, alter, repair, or do work in violation, you know, what I'm getting at is it'd be nice to have it side by side to see the 16 allows that blank. So we didn't necessarily have to put misdemeanor in there. The counselor could have had it go in as an infraction. And we didn't have to have a $1,000 fine or 6 months in jail. I think those were the 3 blanks in there by the state code that we were allowed to put in, so.
And this, just to clarify, this is for the fire code. It's not, you were speaking specifically about a toilet, that'd be plumbing code. So we actually wouldn't apply this code reference, it'd be for fire code. It's not cross-reference in the building on that instance. We're referring to permits that would be deemed out of the fire code.
Well, it does have in there approved construction documents. So construction documents are also building, it's not just fire. But I believe that, personally myself, I'd like to see it come back as a document referencing the 13, the 16, the Lompoc section, and then the third document of the state so we can see exactly what we're going through. I could have spent a few more hours on it. I'd like to have some staff myself to cross-reference on it. But I'm not willing to, I would like to see it not go forward today. I'd like to see it come back with those identified, italicized, the differences and stuff.
And just so you're aware too, we do submit this early on, and we have a technical review both in staff that we spend hours on making sure it's alignment, and we also go to a legal review too to make sure that everything's cross-referenced, our municipal codes versus our state codes are we're speaking the right language. So if there's anything further that I didn't clarify, our city attorney could also attest to.
City manager, you had your light on there for a little while? Yes?
I'm sorry, what?
I thought you had your light on, okay.
But I think it got covered what I was going to cover. The main thing I was going to say is the vast majority of the changes what we were aligning was not chapters, numbers, and verses. But the dialogue is filled in what other portions were the meat that we were talking about. Just wanted to cover that we are planning a workshop to cover that, and as well, if you'd like, if you were inclined to adopt this tonight, we would still come back with a comparison if that's what you'd like to see. It'll take a bit of time and effort and energy to put that together, but we'll do that, including going back to the previous changes that were done in 2013, if there was any concern about how stringent our local adjustments might be versus the state. I think we really need to go back to that group because there wasn't much going on here other than a realignment of that work. I think more volume of that would have been existed in what was adopted in 2013 before I was here or Mr. Mosby was on the council. So we didn't have, when we were discussing it, neither one of us had the benefit of that review.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I might have a little disagreement with that because I don't think I'd be willing to adopt a document now and then read it later. The first thing I'm going to state is there's 2 things in the fiscal impact down here in the conclusion that concern me. I'd like to know specifically what these impacts are. There could be impacts existing, could create conflicts. What are these conflicts? The second thing in the conclusion is, what are these specific changes? This has gone far more than what I was told last time about numerical. We're cleaning it up. We're going to make it numerically right. It appears as though, and I'm going to kind of agree with Councilmember Vega and Mosby here, that there's a lot more in here than what the state code calls for. I think we're reaching out to do more above and beyond. I would love to know what are the specific What changes are specific to the needs of Lompoc, and what are the conflicts so that we could clean it up before we adopt it?
Councilmember Mosby.
And again, reiterating that there is just because previous councils passed it in 2013, it wasn't aligned directly with state. It was a little more aggressive, I saw in some areas. Granted, there's some need for it, but I think that it would be prudent for us to see what 16 is, 13 was, and what we're doing here in 16. And like Councilmember Starbuck says, I'm not willing to pass it now and figure it out later.
Okay, so just so that I've got clarity, what you're looking for is, for what was presented tonight, you'd like to see what is the add delete for that, as opposed to, because it was going to be quite a bit of work for us to go back in 13. It sounds like you would say you wouldn't have adopted that in 13, and that you understood everything you voted for and adopted then. So it sounds like that's not necessary. So what you're looking for is merely add delete for the current action, and that it sounds like you'd rather table that, have that available to you, and we'll come back at a future meeting in the near future with something that shows all those comparisons.
And please include what these conflicts, if we got something wrong with our fees, et cetera, and then the changes, without the changes specific to the needs of Lompoc. That sentence alone is, what are we doing specifically in Lompoc that is different than the rest of the state?
With this action that we're asking, with any change that was going on now?
Yes. Is there something else going on?
No, it's just that the last time we did an adjustment was in 2013. And so it's not those things that were adopted then that may be different than what's going on with the state, because you already reviewed that. You said, so you just want to know of what we're adopting now and what we're proposing for adoption in 2017. What is it that goes beyond what the state would do?
Right, exactly. I mean, it appears to be far more than the numerical cleanup that we were going to do.
All right, fair enough. Just want to make sure we have the
Mosby.
direction straight.
If it's not that significant from 13 to 16, I'd like to see the couple changes. It helped me absorb it, the difference between 13 and 16.
Right, that's
13, 16 as well as the state code.
What we were proposing that you adopt tonight, anything that's creating a change from the prior adoption is what you'd like to see as changing, including if it goes back comparing to 2013, correct?
As well as the comparison to the state code.
Of what we were proposing for
Right.
adoption tonight,
Right.
yes.
Mr. Mayor, may I just comment? I understand the discussions the council are having. It's going to be difficult for your building and fire department to know exactly what they need to do, because they'd been processing building permits based on what was approved in 2013, the modifications. Those modifications that from 2013 that are carried over to here, they would have also been implementing. And if we don't adopt this, all the stuff that was done in 2013 actually isn't effective anymore, because that was for a 2013 code, and this is now for the 2016 code. So I'm just concerned that when someone walks in the door tomorrow, I'm not sure that your staff is going to know what to do if this ordinance isn't adopted, because they technically can't implement the 2013 ordinance because that was for the 2013 state code. So I don't have a solution. I'm just saying the solution I would suggest is what the council didn't seem to want to do, which is adopt this for that reason that I'm saying, that practical reason, and bring it back and so that you can make it less restrictive if you want to make it less restrictive. You can't make it more restrictive, but you could make it less restrictive. So that would be my suggestion to you, but it's your decision.
Councilmember Mosby.
Mr. City Attorney, what have we been doing for the last 3 months?
We've been implementing the 2013 amendments because the changes that were made were just in numbers. So practically speaking, we were okay. But we've introduced this ordinance, and now we were coming just for adoption.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, we rewatched the last meeting, and unfortunately the fire chief's not here, but he had a concern and a little degree of apology for coming to this and not coming to us earlier. And I guess we should have done this maybe back in October or November, maybe? Were the 16 codes available from the state, so we could have moved forward earlier?
Yes.
Okay. And there was a level of that apology that came forward from the chief on that, and I'm still, granted, maybe it puts the city in a level of predicament, but I'm not willing to move forward with something not knowing exactly what it is that I'm doing, and then maybe we'll fix it later. I don't operate that way.
Any other discussion from the council?
I think what we just brought up about not having any type of resolution, we're addressing that with the conflict, maybe a fiscal impact that we don't know. As things get put towards us, appealed, brought forward, we could have legal fees, unknown costs for additional staff time for processing for things that can get attested. So that's where that statement comes from.
Okay, thank you, Dina. Anything else? Oh, Councilmember Osborne.
City Attorney, that 180 days to implement, was that from the January 1st or from when California adopted it back in November or December, whenever it was? That 180 days that we were required to...
You mean the 180-day window
Yeah.
that we could adopt something?
Yeah.
Technically, it's from when the code was adopted by the state.
Okay, and I just want to remind the council that even though we get this report on Thursday, I just want to remind everyone that as we review this, staff is always available to us to go over and answer a lot of these questions until, well, up until the meeting. So, I mean, I think the staff would really appreciate it if we bring these concerns to them on a Friday or on a Monday or even an email over the weekend so they can get these addressed instead of at the last minute like this. Now, I understand that they've had 180 days or whatever to bring this forward to us, but use our staff to address a lot of your concerns prior to tonight is all I'm saying. So, Councilmember Mosby.
I did come by yesterday. I know it's short time, but to answer your question, I did come by yesterday on a Monday.
Well, thank you for that. So, okay, thank you, Dina. We may need, oh, yes, City Clerk.
I'm not sure what.
Oh, we're going to
direction
get
is.
public comment right now, and then we'll come back. Okay. Okay, public comment. You want to add to this? Or you're thoroughly confused? Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the council. And any discussion? I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Mosby.
And make a motion, we bring it back, staff bring it back with the recommendations we requested. If the city manager's got those, nods yes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Let's vote. Okay, so we'll bring it back at Mr. City Attorney.
Just for the record, the public hearing that's legally required was completed today, so that won't come back as a public hearing, it'll come back as a business item.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item number 6, consideration of appeal of the Planning Commission determination regarding the type and use permit appropriate for preparation of services of food and wine in the food and wine ghetto. Okay, this is Ms. Breeze.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. As the mayor indicated tonight, we are recommending that the council hold a public hearing, consider the material presented in the staff report, and direct staff to prepare a resolution with appropriate findings of fact, affirming, reversing, or modifying the decision of the Planning Commission, or provide alternative direction. As discussed in your staff report, the Council and the Planning Commission have previously advised members of the wine industry that food preparation and service could be allowed in the wine ghetto with a conditional use permit. On February 8th, the Planning Commission held a discussion to review a request for staff to provide a resolution making an interpretation that the preparation and sale of food in the wine ghetto is a use within the intent and purpose of a staff-issued temporary use permit. The temporary use permit is a permit at the staff level that is generally utilized for items that are for uses that are a Christmas tree lot, a circus, that type of a very temporary use. The conditional use permit is a permit that is looked at, analyzed for a very specific use in a specific location to make sure that all the appropriate conditions are placed on it. It's reviewed by the technical staff, goes to a public hearing at the Planning Commission level, and then conditions of approval are placed on it. There's a significant cost difference between the temporary use permit and the use permit, as explained in the fiscal impact section of your report. And the temporary use permit is a fixed cost at approximately $342. That it's a typical basic cost with standard conditions of approval. And during our master fee update, the time that was generated for that type of a permit came to approximately that amount of money. The conditional use permit is a permit that is analyzed by the technical staff. Conditions are placed on it. There's meetings held, there's notices. We do charge time and materials for cost recovery. And so the charge for a conditional use permit, there is a deposit required. As I said, it's time and material. There's a deposit required for planning time, for building time, for fire review. So those costs, depending on how much time is actually taken by the staff in the hearing and the noticing, it will be charged and paid for by the applicant as opposed to by the general fund. The question for the Planning Commission was if the temporary use permit was the appropriate permit to be issued, or if a conditional use permit was the appropriate permit. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on February 8th, and you were provided with the minutes and staff analysis. The Planning Commission cast a split vote at their meeting. They voted 3-2 that the temporary use permit was not the appropriate permit. A timely appeal was filed requesting that the City Council action would consider allowing a temporary use permit to be used for food service in the wine ghetto area until the zoning ordinance is updated. The council has provided us at the last meeting with the ability in our zoning ordinance update to hold a workshop with the wine industry, which is what we plan on moving forward doing, to discuss with them their needs and how they see the actual use going forward, what types of uses they see going forward. It's always been intended that in the zoning ordinance update, we would hold either a zoning overlay or an amendment of some sort to the ordinance in the industrial to allow the possibility of food. We just don't know how that is going to come out until we hold the hearings and the discussions and it's vetted in the public. So the actual outcome in the ordinance will probably, we won't know until maybe approximately the first quarter, about a year actually, by the time we have the ordinance completed. I would just like to note that at the actual Planning Commission meeting, we did have staff, our Fire Marshal, Battalion Chief Paschke was there, and we also had the staff from the wastewater area to discuss issues in the issuance of permits. And that staff is here this evening and would be happy to discuss with you as part of the staff report, give you kind of a basic of what they did give the Planning Commission so that you can be aware of the information that was given to the Planning Commission, why the staff believes the temporary use permit is not the appropriate permit. So I'll introduce them as soon as I just complete that. We did provide some options in the staff report for the council. If the council chooses to direct staff on how to proceed. So there are some options in the staff report, and we'd be happy to go over any of them with you. The agreement is, everyone, I believe, agrees that ultimately food is a good pairing with wine in the wine industry. It is really the path to achieve the goal and how we operate our ordinance so that it's done on, so everyone's on an equal playing field, and the permits that are issued appropriately, because there are a number of building and safety issues that need to be addressed. And with that, I would ask our fire marshal to come up and give you a brief description of some of those particular items.
Good evening. For clarification, we really want food with the wine. So we're trying to help with that process for streamlining. The one thing that is difficult to do a one-size-fits-all. If you're talking catered prepackaged food in a small cooler where they're just selling it on premises, there's no food preparation, that's very simple. That's a deli style. A little bit of health department ensures that it's made and packaged in a commercial kitchen that's approved, and we're off to the races. When we want to add a kitchen in an existing occupancy that's going to be used to serve the public, that then we start moving into a change of use. It becomes more of a restaurant, and that's where we kick in some additional codes. I bring that to your attention because sometimes when new owners or people that want to sign a lease come to us with these amazing ideas, they may be so focused on what their vision is, they don't know some of the nuts and bolts, which ultimately have a fiscal impact and may not be aware for their business. So when starting essentially a change of use or a restaurant, it kicks in some additional concerns. One of which, over a commercial cooking facility, you need a fire suppression hood system, commercial hoods. Those are stainless, they're big metal, they have a lot of mechanical, and they have suppression built in it for the safety of the public, but they're expensive. So we want to make sure that that new entrepreneur knows about that. Accessibility, when you start adding tables and chairs, a lot of tasting rooms are set up where there's kind of a standing counter, a couple little chairs possibly, and it's not a sit-down dining formal. We have to have certain heights of tables, chairs, occupant loads change, and flow patterns for the accessibility that is state mandated by the codes. There's also energy efficiency calculations that kick in because you need a permit. So then we have to make sure that your energy codes all up to date, whatnot. It is a state kind of run tabulated, so as you upgrade lighting, you usually get more incompliant, but we like to make them aware of that. And ultimately what needs to occur too is this is a commercial public space, so we're kind of out of that realm of a residential owner builder. Homeowner wants to, add a bathroom, come to the counter, we can kind of assist you with what you need to get a permit if you own the building. This gets them into a design professional, architect, some safety measures. So having a temporary use permit, we don't get that design review board where we come in, we have all staff on present, and we go, these are some of the things that are going to come across your table, so you're aware of early. And they know fiscally what could impact them, and maybe they might go back to that prepackaged food, or they're ready to take that full leap and have put in a restaurant and go through the building permits and the planning reviews and whatnot. There's also, when you add a commercial hood, it's not just that one-time cost. Every 6 months, there's a maintenance that's required. So they have to service the hood, an outside party comes in and make sure it's cleaned regularly above and beyond their normal cleaning procedures. They would, when you start moving in, if you're not already have 50 people above, you also you need an operational permit if you have any suppression systems or a hood suppression, a commercial kitchen, or you increase the capacity with a new floor design to have over 50 people in it. And that's done for the public safety, so people can exit the building and have certain safety standards. And that's typical and done throughout the state, many states, all states. One thing that's key, as we just talked about some state mandated codes, when you change the use of a building, you actually have to reissue a certificate of occupancy. That involves staff time as well. We have to circulate all staff. I mean, it goes even to the city clerk's office to make sure whoever did any work in there or the owner has a current business tax certificate. Or their subcontractors, do they all have a current business tax certificate? It goes down the line of everybody has to sign off. Water, wastewater, I know that they'll talk about one of the things that's covered in the building code, which is the municipal code, overlaps as well, grease interceptors, because they have concerns as you have additional waste products that would go downstream. You want to make sure you don't put grease in the lines, and I'll let wastewater tackle that one. So some of these, we're moving from an occupant of mercantile to restaurant. So depending what type of food service, it's not quite a one size fits all. We're looking at kind of an appetizer prepared, or are we going to a full kitchen? That was at the Planning Commission. We couldn't really give them an easy, streamlined cut sheet because we didn't know what the scope of their work is. Our regulations are really determined by the scope of the work, which is great because we can expand or contract depending if it's a really small addition. There's not much that's going to need to be added. Health department may give it their sign off, their approval. It'll fly through our system. If they want to add a kitchen, that's where we get a little bit more in the nuts and bolts. Now, whether they do a cup, a sup, any type of use permit, if they're going to change the building that's open to the public, they need a licensed contractor to do that work and a design professional. So they will still wind up with a building permit if they're going to alter the building. And sometimes in a one-sheet piece of paper on a TUP, that doesn't really come out. You don't see that. So I caution for our disclosure for our business owners that they know sometimes what they're getting into. Now, the bigger parties are probably aware of that. So the building code also covers whether, if you don't want to call it a full change of use, it's also a change of function. So maybe by adding a kitchen, they're not going all the way into being a full assembly because it's not quite big enough to have 50 people in there. It's still a change of function. So they still have to get a new certificate of occupancy. So you would still have that staff time reviewing that and making sure that this is a safe use of that area, and the technical staff review it. The design review board, which we deem the DRB, which we also have a free review that happens once a month, that people can come into our sounding board and go, I'm thinking about doing this project. What are some of the things that you guys want to throw up on the wall in my planning stages that I need to be aware of? We already have that in place, so we encourage people to come in and speak to us at our design reviews. You can also set up a design review board where we have staff circulate the project, give us your conceptual, usually it's a nice kind of cool looking drawing, a little bit of your vision, a little statement of what you want to do. It's not the full plans, it's not the full scope of work. We meet with you and give you some technical advice and support going, hey, if you want to do this, add this kitchen, this is the path you're going to do. If you want to just do a deli, then you only have to make these and maybe you save yourself the $12,000 hood. So these are some of the things that will come up. By having a DRB, we allow that technical staff to advise that customer to know that end product. And kind of they get their foot wet before they jump in the deep end at times, maybe even before they sign a lease, or at least know what the whole process is.
Adina?
Yes.
So If we were to go ahead and allow temporary use permits, wouldn't they be eligible for the design review board and everything else at that point for the temporary use permit as well?
They're kind of not in one and the same. That falls more under planning. I want to make sure I don't, anything with a UP, that goes there.
The use permit process, a temporary use permit is something that generally will come in, someone will apply for it through the planning division. We will circulate to building, engineering, and fire and electrical, have them look at it. But we don't do any development review board. There's no meeting associated with that. Because for a Christmas tree lot, whether it's a big Christmas tree lot or a small Christmas tree lot, the conditions are generally going to be the same. We're going to look and make sure that there's access, there's parking, that there is appropriate facilities for the public. It's a very simple process. That's what the temporary, or a circus, those types of uses, we've done them many times, so we have regular conditions. When you're looking at something, as Dina was describing, that you go from a diner, a deli, a full sit-down restaurant, each one of those, and it also depends on where it's located. Is there adequate parking? Are there facilities for the public? What type of use is actually coming forward? That's what the conditional use permit does. It is a focused review of a project that is coming through. With that, we circulate to all of our city departments, and we have a development review board meeting. Sit down with the applicant, go over conditions, so it's very clear, as was stated, before they go forward, they have a clear understanding of what's going to be done, what they need to do technically to move forward. That takes a great deal of staff time, and we have to do public noticing, we have to do meetings at the Planning Commission, so there is more cost involved. That's why you see the larger deposit. So the applicant is paying for the staff time as opposed to the general fund subsidizing it.
Okay, so let's say we agreed to issue temporary use permits, and someone wanted to come in and talk to you about a full-blown kitchen, a five-star restaurant down there. There's no shortcuts that they're going to take. They're still going to have the stainless steel fire suppression, kitchen, everything else. So they're still going to be required to do that. So we're not talking about not having the same safety issues as if they wait a year for the zoning to change. Is that correct?
They will still have to go through all of the building requirements and the safety requirements. The difference in that is that they will not be paying for any of the staff time. The general fund will be subsidizing that.
Well, you said that the deposit would be larger.
If you have a conditional use permit, it's a larger.
But a temporary use permit?
It's the $340, and it's a fixed fee.
I see, okay.
And that is generally a quicker turnaround. For a standard TUP, we have it's a 5 to 10 day turnaround because it just comes in, we circulate it, and then it's a standard letter that we issue. The applicant signs it, that they're going to be available and responsible. So it is a quicker process, definitely.
What would be a reason for it? Let's say again, we go with temporary use permits. What would be a reason for denying a temporary use permit?
You would deny a temporary use permit if there was not adequate security, if the application came through without the information that we needed, if they're leasing land from the city, if we didn't have insurance. Those are all things that we would have to work out. If they did not have the proper safety issues involved, we could deny it. So I think And we've had problems with some of the temporary uses with wastewater. And I would like, Mr. Bean is here, our utility manager. He would like to speak to the wastewater issues to you before we're finished as well. There are issues that we would need to consider. It does take time for the staff, again, to do inspections. Everyone is going to be doing inspections of the uses and watching to make sure that all of the conditions, because there are conditions placed on the temporary use permit that the applicant does sign to and agree, but they are more really, they're simple conditions as far as where you're going to have fire extinguishers, where you have to have your parking, how you have to have things laid out. Like a circus on a dirt lot, you'd have parking in a certain area, you'd have restrooms provided in a certain area, you might have security that was provided. So there would be things that the applicant would have to sign and agree to. If they did not meet those conditions, then we could potentially revoke the TUP.
Thank you. Before you leave,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Vega.
I see Mr. Pannoni. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He'd like to speak. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you asked if how a permit could be denied. The focus of the council needs not to be on what it can be used to be denied, but how can a TUP be granted? The municipal code sets up a process, a path for approving a temporary use permit. There's a list of uses specifically identified, which the use we're discussing tonight doesn't fall in those categories. There's a catch-all category that says the Planning Commission can determine whether or not a particular use that isn't on the list falls into the intent and purpose of the TUP process. If you go to the intent and purpose of the TUP process, that's to allow uses that are subject to a temporary use permit for those temporary uses which are required for the proper functioning of the community or are temporarily required in the process of establishing a permitted use. When the Planning Commission considered this use under the path that's required by the code, they determined they couldn't make that finding. So if the council during your discussion decides you want to allow the temporary use path for this use, you're going to need to put something in the record to show why your decision would be covering the intent and purpose. And I'm just going to be frank with you, I don't understand how, if someone's going to pay a lot of money to put in a oven and a hood and all that, that's going to be considered a temporary use, but you may be able to figure out whether it is.
Thank you. Councilmember Vega?
Lucille, that's exactly where I was going with this question. Me having owned 2 restaurants, I think I know the detail that it takes, okay? So under the TUP, let's just be straightforward here. Are restaurants going to be allowed, or is that something that maybe we can address to make sure that the temporary use only addresses it in a temporary fashion subject to an ordinance update so that we don't get anybody in a pickle? Because one of the issues would be, we're talking about full-blown kitchens. I don't know of anybody that would do that under a temporary use type thing, put that kind of investment in and pay those kind of fees without some sort of guarantee that we're going to move forward. Everybody's assuming that everything's going to move forward and we're going to get an overlay that's going to change the zoning, but assuming is also not a guarantee, the assumption.
Well, and that's one of the difficulties I believe the Planning Commission had in making the finding, as Mr. Pannoni expressed. It is something that there's no guarantee. We all have talked about food in the wine industry, in the wine ghetto, and in the industrial area in general. And talking about it and agreeing that there should be some path to allowing food. In previous discussions, workshops at the council and planning commission level, it was stated as a conditional use permit, you can look at it very specifically where it's located and have more of a control over, actually how many and what type, that type of thing. With the temporary use permit, it's kind of a different animal, different type of a permit entirely. So there would have to be some parameters if that is the path that the council chose. And one of the options that we presented to you would be to send it back to the Planning Commission for some sort of parameters so that there would be very specific conditions under which perhaps a temporary use permit could be operated or permitted for that type of
Another
use.
one of my questions here is, and just to be clear here, I absolutely think food needs to go along with the wine industry. Just trying to figure out how to get us there to that path, okay? And to do it legally, and for us to make sure that we're all being straightforward here and not to use the temporary use permit should we move forward to where people might take advantage of it, okay? I think that's what I think that the investment, if they make that investment, their assumption, again, it's going to be a lot of money, okay? So if we cut it right in half, okay, I think one of the issues here is we don't have solidarity, or we don't have a consensus here because everyone's they're so independent in the wine industry. So the TUP, would it be a blanket TUP, or would it be an individual subject to application process, okay? Now, the other part of it, I can see that you would have, you could have barbecues, or you could have food trucks, or something of that nature where the investment doesn't infringe on the permit process, and the investment doesn't, and it also doesn't infringe on fire safety or anything else that we might entail. So how we get around that, I don't know. I think it's going to take the wine industry and the owner to come up with a consensus, not just one or two people to say, hey, we want it. I think we need to find out, hey, what do you want? Because we're here to help, but we're not there to turn it into something we want. I think the TUP is probably a great tool to allow food, as long as you don't go head over heels until the zoning update is complete. That way you feel secure in your investment, and that I just don't see any other way out of it that we need to be talking about full service restaurants under a TUP process. So I can see them wanting food and getting food there to facilitate, and it actually, I don't know if anybody wants to drink without eating, okay? So we need to find out exactly what they want, I think, okay?
And that's the purpose of the workshop that we're going to be holding in May. The other thing to note is currently there is food in the wine ghetto. They are permitted to do prepackaged food, and there are food trucks I know that are there on the weekends.
Yes, we know that.
So there is no lack of food there in that area.
So the other issue that I bring up here is the sewer line, okay?
And yes, Mr. Bean can address that.
And I got you, but if he's ready, let's go ahead and do this. Might as well get right to it, right, Larry? I think a year away is far for a business to try and survive without some sort of help here, just waiting. So, Larry, again, one of my questions is, under a TUP process, and this is where you guys are going to have to go together on this, the cost associated with the upgrade in the sewer line or the additional maintenance that may be required, I think, is probably one of my concerns, who's going to pay for it versus the TUP versus the conditional use permit. That's why I think it's probably unrealistic to say that the TUP is going to allow restaurants, because of the grease trap issue. You can ask them to go dump it on their own and, go take it to wastewater so it doesn't go through the pipes. But I think that's kind of unrealistic to say, hey, we're going to have a full-blown grease trap, or we're going to have a program from which wastewater will pick it up in a portable container so that we don't pollute our sewer lines any more than they are, or and go above capacity. But because from what I understand, the Lompoc Hospital shares that same line, or at least portions of it. Now that you talk about that.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, City Council members, members of the public, I'm Larry Bean, Utility Director. I'm here to give a little history on the infrastructure for that. If you all recall, this complex of metal buildings was constructed in an industrial zone. those metal buildings were, the infrastructure was built as if there was going to be a little welding shop, a body shop, a bicycle shop, some storage. They were going to have 1 or 2 employees per building. There's a sink and a toilet. Now we've let it grow into, from wine storage to wineries, tasting rooms, and passing out food, even though it was made off premises. So it's grown and grown and grown with no improvement to the infrastructure. How many people go through one of those winery tasting rooms now in a week compared to the toilet flushes that was designed? Probably 100 times. Now we have a 6-inch sewer line that runs along Sabani's metal buildings, behind the hospital and behind Home Depot, over to 12th Street, a 6-inch sewer line. It's quite adequate in initial design, but we've let this area grow and grow and grow in its use with no improvements. All right? Then I'll add in the property that was annexed. It's now the Zodovich property. When the final design of that property was made before Zodovich took it over, there were numerous improvements that needed to be made to infrastructure, streets, sidewalks, etc. Zodovich came in and made an argument, let me get my metal building going so I can store wine and make a little wine and have some income, and then I'll do the improvements. His improvement was supposed to be a 10-inch sewer line running in place of the 6-inch from 12th Street over to 3rd. Very expensive endeavor. But we're at the point that someone has to build that. Is one cold cut sandwich shop in the wine ghetto going to make that happen? No, they couldn't afford it. Is a full-blown restaurant going to make that happen? Probably not, because if you make them put in a 3,500-foot sewer line, they can't afford it. The people that own those buildings who are have now got to change the use to a much higher level need to put the sewer line in. There's no way that a temporary use permit can work for this. I'm not even sure that some of those wine tasting rooms aren't connected to 1-inch, 4-inch sewer line. What happens if you add fat, oil, and grease into a restaurant down from one of the tasting rooms, and then it backs up over the weekend? Whose responsibility is that? So you got to remember what this was built as. If you want it to be a different zoning, it's time for someone to step up and improve the sewer line. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Bean?
Yes, Larry, one more time. It says we're at capacity, but there have been no overspills or overruns. Is that because of the maintenance that's involved here?
That's correct. It is in what we call an enhanced maintenance area. We know the time of year it's bad, during the crush, and we're happy to support the wineries that are there. We go out once a week and check it during that time. We jet clean those lines 5 times over 4 months during the crush season.
Now, the capacity over here that you see happening, if it was something other than full-service restaurants, subject to, it probably wouldn't impact it very much, correct?
It might not. I think before you let 5 or 6 of them go in, someone should do a flow study to see what happens to that 6-inch line.
How do you guys do that?
We hire an engineering firm.
Okay, you guys
They'll
don't
go
do
out
it
and measure
in-house?
it. No, we don't do it. It's for the expense of the developer, not the rest of the ratepayers.
Is there a cost on that?
Yeah, probably $5,000 to $10,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Weinmiller?
Mr. Bean, just to emphasize, you made the statement that during its peak use time, you basically flush out those lines 5 times within a 4-month period.
Correct.
For a regular section of pipe somewhere else in the city, with what frequency do you flush lines?
Once a year. We have some other.
Use mic, Tim.
Sorry about that.
Pinkovich, wastewater superintendent.
Thank you. Yeah, once a year, once every 2 years.
Right. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we understood how
Correct.
much increased service this is to try to maintain these sewer lines running at the current size and use profiles.
Correct.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Breeze, anything else?
Thank you. I'd just like to point out that, again, we are just focusing on the type of permit that would be appropriate, either a temporary use permit or a conditional use permit. And that was what the issue in front of the Planning Commission was. And the options that we have outlined for the council consideration would be for staff to continue to work with the wine industry to assure their needs are fully considered and whenever possible met in the upcoming zoning ordinance update, or to return the concept of food service in the industrial district to the Planning Commission, to proceed with the proposed zoning ordinance workshop, which will be occurring the end of May, to specifically consider the concept of food service in the entire industrial district, not just the wine ghetto, to return the matter to the Planning Commission to provide further direction regarding the specific regulations to be placed on a TUP specific to food service, if that is the direction the council wishes to proceed, or to process a CUP for interim food service use as previously directed, or consider a discounted rate for the CUP, understanding that the general fund would subsidize the cost of the CUP. So that if the council grants the appeal, there are additional details to be determined regarding the regulations for the TUP, which should be returned to the Planning Commission for clarification. So that completes my staff report, and I'm available for any questions, as is the rest of your staff.
Thank you. Councilman Vega.
Yeah, so what you're saying is we could grant the appeal subject to Planning Commission being involved, it's a question, to set the guidelines for which it would be the least restrictive as far as, and provide least impact on our sewer line, subject to any kind of zoning update or after the public hearing you're planning on having? Is that one of the paths? I mean, it's kind of a backwards path, I think you were saying, but I'm asking a question. Is that something that could be done?
If you wanted to return, if the council determination was to return it to the Planning Commission to consider the path of a TUP and to set regulations, that certainly is an option.
Is that approving it, or is it not approving it, or is it just sending it back to ask them to put some guidelines on this?
Well, that would be sending it back to the Planning Commission with council direction.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Benoni, one more question for you, because you look so happy tonight. Okay, so I asked earlier on what...
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can we just add one thing? I apologize.
Sure.
We just wanted to add that when you change the occupancy in a building, that also drives the number of bathrooms that are needed, so that increases that load for the public, as well as when you're looking at the grease or anything that would be coming from the actual kitchen area.
Okay.
Got one more question, Bob, if I could.
Go ahead.
Lucille, one more question here, and it may take a couple of people here to answer. Bottom line here, okay? Once the zoning ordinance, the update is complete, and you provide an overlay, okay, which says, hey, it's okay, we're going to allow that area to have food. What about the sewer line? Who pays for that? What's going to happen? Is the overlay just going to say, okay, and we're just going to deal with overflows or possibly overcapacities, or is it going to be on the city because we approved it as far as the overlay in that area when it happens? How do we address that?
That's looking to the future, and we don't really know how it is going to be allowed. I know that as Mr. Bean noted, the original approval in that area was for the developer of the, Santa Rita Hills at that time, as it was known as. One of the requirements was for that developer to put in the improvements that were necessary. I know that we have had a variety of other applicants when the hotel was looking to go into that area. Mr. Weimiller worked on a agreement to share the cost there. There's other options, ways to get the improvements, the infrastructure improvements necessary into that area. When Grefco was brought in, it was brought in as an industrial site. There was no improvement because it was going to remain as an industrial area, and any development that occurred over there, the developer was going to pay for the improved infrastructure. So these things would all be things that would need to be looked at as part of the discussion.
Part of the Lisa Wise consulting firm where we've actually approved funding for $14,000 to help them move forward with looking specifically at the wine ghetto area with food, okay? If you approve an overlay without the infrastructure, is that possible? This is not part of their scope of work, is that correct?
That is the only thing that they're looking at is the zoning regulation. They're not looking at the infrastructure.
So is that a little odd, not to reference that, or does that take two different departments or a different method of funding? Is that where we come in on this?
It would certainly be a different method of funding. It would be something that the property owners might have to, again, there was an agreement I know that was brokered previously by the city, and that may have to go into effect in order to allow that use to occur.
Yeah, that was my question. You changed and put an overlay in on zoning, but you can't utilize it. So, it seems kind of.
And we're not sure that it will be an overlay. We're not exactly sure what the determination will be. That is a discussion that is going to occur, and it will be occurring at the Planning Commission. There will be recommendations made. Ultimately, the decision will come forward to the council on what the zoning will allow.
Thank you.
Mr. Benoni, so we're dealing with a lot of hypotheticals here, and I asked you earlier, under what conditions could a TUP be denied? You said we're not really discussing that, so under what conditions could a TUP be pulled? For instance, if all of our scenarios come true, we issue a couple of TUPs and we have restaurants in there and the sewers start blocking up, and can we pull a TUP? Under what conditions?
Whatever conditions you attach to the TUP when you grant it. So you could be very specific in how you could pull it, whether time frame, sewer flow, whatever.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm sure someone from the public would like to have some comments on this. Let's come on up to the counter, or the podium.
Mr. Mayor, member of the council, my name is Morris Sobani. I know I cannot ask questions from the staff, but I'll address the city council. First of all, I think this has been exploded to something much more than what originally intended. As Councilman Bayo said, nobody's going to build a $500,000 kitchen up there. They are trying to serve a simple food, maybe a sandwich or cheeseburger or something like that. So I don't know how this thing has exploded from there, that the building official say, oh my God, $10,000 hoods and a stove, and so nobody's going to get that kind of money. So be reasonable. These people, for a temporary use permit, because city has the right to withdraw that thing, how could you bring up these things? If your intent is here to accommodate this wine industry, regardless of metal building or regardless of what it is what it is, and it's brought a major success to the city. Nobody talks about what has happened here. I'm really disappointed in some of the comments from the city staff to bring up this thing. First of all, they said they have been cleaning that line 5 times every 4 months. How could they go look at that line? I don't know what kind of people look at that line. That line is an 8-inch line. I put it in. How could they say 6-inch line and get in the soapbox and say, well, 6-inch line? First of all, a 6-inch line could serve a large community, has lots of capacity. Now, if people are dumping something foreign, they should stop the winery, the people who are polluting the line. There's no reason to say the line is under capacity. I have written to the city administrator 2 letters, 2 emails after the planning commission requesting that could meet with me and his staff. This is not the place to bring up these technical points here. I'm willing to work with them, but unfortunately, he decided not to respond to me. I'm disappointed. So I just want to say, please look at this issue based on the need of these wineries. They're not going to build big kitchen. They're not going to dump grease or nothing like that. Now, you could pass this TUP saying, well, no kitchen allowed, no hot food of some kind. Just you could word it somehow. And I'm sure the city attorney could help you to draft a letter to protect the city and all these alleged things that the staff has brought together. If your intent is here to provide, City of Buellton, all of the community are providing this thing, they must have done something. They're not complaining about it. In fact, you go to Los Olivos, they do not have any sewer even. Everything is porta potty. So it is, if it's a desire of the community to help out this industry, there are ways to do it. But if your desire is here to kill the industry, listen to your staff.
Thank you, Mr. Sabani. Next, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Steve Pepe, the president of the Econ Alliance, which is a 501c nonprofit which promotes economic development in the North County. At the beginning of this decade, Lompoc requested CalEd study economic development. That resulted in 2012 the creation of the Lompoc Economic Development Committee. We went through 40 hours of training, and part of it was to identify development opportunities in Lompoc. It was a very short list, but the wine ghetto was the top of everyone's list. It also identified barriers to success, and it's a very long list, and lack of food in the ghetto was near the top. We were told that the Lompoc zoning code would not permit food service in industrial areas, even though Buellton and the Santa Barbara Funk Zone do this quite well. We suggested an overlay. We were told to wait for the zoning update. That was 5 years ago. We suggested food trucks as a short-term fix, and we're told the Lompoc ordinance would not permit that on a public street. We asked Steve at Sissy's to bring in sandwiches. We worked with him and the county health department, and it failed for all the obvious reasons. Then the council had the chance to order the zoning update for food in the ghetto, and you chose not to. You decided to go ahead with signs, which is a very unwise decision. Now we're told it's going to take 1 more year. Well, what has the rest of the world been doing in the last intervening 5 years? Los Alamos in 2013 had 3 restaurants, a pizza place, a burger place, and a diner. In 2017, they've added 4, Bell Street Farm, Pico, Plenty, and Bob's Wellbread. And the tasting rooms are moving there. Looking east to Buellton, Buellton is eating our lunch and bedding our customers. The Buellton sales tax per capita tops the county at $385. Lompoc is next to the bottom at 86. You're higher than the county, but that's like being taller than Mickey Rooney. The tot and the bed tax has similar unimpressive results for Lompoc. Solvang has $733 per capita. Lompoc is $39 per capita. Buellton is 1/8 the size of Lompoc and has 400% more sales tax revenue and almost 900% more bed tax revenue than Lompoc. The Buellton Planning Commission has 30 testing rooms before it, all within walking distance of restaurants or will include a restaurant. That is the past and the present. What is the future? Next year, unless you take some action, paraphrasing Ross Perot, you'll hear a great sucking sound as the ghetto tasting rooms move to Buellton. And the wine industry didn't tell Buellton what kind of food service it wanted. The marketplace will decide that. And I'm out of time, but I also point out that bakeries and pizza ovens don't require stainless steel hoods and can be rolled in and rolled out very easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pepe. Next, please.
Mayor, council members, my name's Tom Davidson. I'm on the Economic Development Committee. If I'm going to be held to 5 minutes, I don't think I can do that.
Actually, 3 minutes.
The real issue here is the new ordinance going to allow food in the industrial areas or the wine ghetto area or not? If it isn't, let's all go home. If it is, then I've been arguing for a year, why don't we allow a path to get there sooner than later? You know, on the Economic Development Committee, we talk about economic development. Well, guess what? A restaurant in the wine ghetto area is economic development. It's instantly going to help those businesses that are there. The staff report, they talk about food preparation and food service, and that's all irrelevant. You're going to allow a restaurant or not? Go look at these other zoning ordinances. It doesn't talk about food preparation and food service. Either allow a restaurant or you don't. The market, as Mr. Pepe describes, they're going to decide. And the market's going to decide, do they want to spend $5 or $500,000 to do that? So if this is going to be allowed in the future, why not treat it like it would be treated if it were allowed? If I want to cross the street on Ocean or up on H Street, and I want to take a restaurant and put it in one of those buildings, there's no TUP, there's no CUP. If it's an allowed use, there's a process you go through. If I go into a building that doesn't have a restaurant, and I represent the people that own Flower Valley Plaza, I have some vacancies. If somebody wants to go in there and put a restaurant in, they have to get a building permit. They have to do all of this stuff that these people are talking about. So let's go through how the Planning Commission looked at this, and that's the first thing. I mean, we've had another 30, 40 minutes of the wastewater people, the building department, the Planning Commission wringing their hands about all of these things. All of that's irrelevant. TUP, CUP. If you're going to put a restaurant in a building, you have to do all of those things. If I go up on 8th Street where it's allowed, I put a restaurant in there, I change the use, guess what? I got to meet all of DINA's requirements. I got to meet the parking. I got to fill out a baseline monitoring report for the wastewater people. I got to meet all of those things. So that's all irrelevant to this discussion. Do you want to make this easy for people, or do you want to make it hard? If somebody, a new tenant comes into Mr. Mosby's restaurant up the street here on 8th Street, if he wants to change things, first of all, a new guy, new person, he's going to have to meet all the health department requirements because it's a new operator. If he wants to move walls around in here, they're going to have to meet all of those things. It has nothing to do with CUP or TUP. Commissioner Fink in that thing talked about ABC things, and I hear these people talking about wine tasting rooms. We're not talking about a wine tasting room adding a restaurant or a winery adding a restaurant. We're talking about a restaurant. Has anybody here been to Industrial Eats in Buellton? That's an industrial zone.
Mr.
There's a restaurant.
If I allow you 2 more minutes, would you be able to finish up in 2
Sure.
minutes? Okay, give him 2 more minutes.
So you have a restaurant, right next door is the Almarosa Tasting Room. Different licenses, different deal, zoning's industrial. I keep hearing about this cumulative effect on the sewer system too, and the fact that Sabonis Park was designed to be a welding shop. No, it wasn't. It was an industrial park, and there's a whole bunch of uses. Right now, there's a bunch of them that happen to be wineries. That's irrelevant. If I want to put a restaurant in, I got to fill out a baseline monitoring report, and I got to hand that to the wastewater guys, and they have to decide, do I need a grease trap? What kinds of things do I have? Can you meet it or not? What's fascinating to me is that The planning commission, the city council, the staff, there's a 115,000 square foot hospital, 60-bed hospital connected to that same line. How many of you people were wringing your hands and talking about, let's upgrade the line when that went in? And now you're talking about a 1,000-foot deli, and suddenly they got to spend $500,000 to upgrade the sewer line? I mean, it's just, it makes absolutely no sense to me. One of the commissioners said there's no consensus with the wine industry. We had about 30 people at the wine industry, at the planning commission meeting. We don't have that many people here tonight, but I'd like to know how many people affiliated with the wine industry. So there's this thing that there's no consensus. Let me just ask a couple questions, and if we had 50 people, I think the same results would happen. Would you like the city of Lompoc to allow a restaurant in the wine ghetto area? How many people say yes? How many people say no? Let's also look at, how about the agree or disagree? I don't care what kind of restaurant, I just want a restaurant. How many people agree with that? How many people disagree? So, do you think the city should allow a path where it takes more money in a longer period of time, or B, less money in a shorter period of time? Longer period of time, more money. Shorter period of time, less money. So all of this antics about there's not consensus in the wine industry, there is, if you ask the right questions. So to me, it seems like you can have a very simple process. Temporary use permit, and the conditions are, you have to meet all of the building department requirements, you have to meet the fire department requirements, and you have to meet the planning department requirements. It's so simple. It's not about all of this antics. It's a very, very simple process. Somebody comes in and says, I want a restaurant in this space. They're going to have to go through all of those things.
I need to wrap it up now. Thank you. Okay, next.
So, good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jack Roden. Hi, I live here in Lompoc, and I'm on the Planning Commission. And I should say to start with that this wasn't my original idea, but I did introduce the motion at the Planning Commission that we consider this idea. And I think what we're seeing here is that there are two parts of this permitting process. There is the land use, whether or not this is an appropriate use in this location, and there are all of the health, safety, and infrastructure issues that have to be considered. They're a separate consideration. Any business that goes in any location has to meet the requirements for health, safety, and infrastructure in order to proceed. But now, as Lucille said, a conditional use permit is a permit for a specific business in a specific location, a project. Whether or not we can approve this specific project in that location, and that's not necessarily, or that's not really an appropriate permitting process for what we're talking about here. We've all talked about the desirability of having food in the wine ghetto. This is not a specific use in a specific location. This is a general permission to go forward with this kind of use. And a temporary use permit, one of the reasons that we can grant a temporary use permit is while we are in the process of establishing a permitted use for this kind of business in this location. So I think this fits into the definition for a temporary use permit. And what I'd like to see happen, actually, I don't think that you all can approve us to go forward with a temporary use permit at this point. I think what you really need to do is to send it back to the Planning Commission, but send it back to the Planning Commission with a different set of parameters. And the parameters that I would suggest that you would send it back to us with is how can we, what parameters should we place on a temporary use permit in order to allow food in the wine ghetto? Then when you receive this back, it would be much more developed, and it would be something that would be not quite such a big step into the unknown. So that would be my suggestion for the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Rodenheim. Anyone else? Oh, excuse me, Jack? you wanna
Could I
come
ask
back?
Jack a question?
Yes, Jim.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Been taking notes here, and I was at the Planning Commission meeting as well. And I know one of the questions about consensus was the definition of food service and preparation. What do you see that to be?
I see that as being portable appliances that could be rolled in or rolled out, operations that may be like Southside Coffee or Divine that don't create a lot of, I mean, there's no frying going on there. Things are done in toaster ovens and microwaves. And yet the food there is excellent. So that would be one of the things that I would see the Planning Commission coming back to the City Council with.
And I think that's what the question about consensus was that I saw at the meeting is that, and again, today I've heard potentially a big restaurant, pizza ovens, hamburgers, deli. So, I mean, it seems to be, and I can see a lot more on the line, something like Divine or Southside, like you're saying there, that has a different level to it. So I think that's the one definition I think we're having a hard time grasping is what does the food service and preparation mean?
Right. I think what I would see the Planning Commission coming back with is kind of a low-key effort, the kind of investment on the part of the businessman where if it turns out that this doesn't get approved as a part of the zoning ordinance, where they could pull it all out and they wouldn't lose their shirt in the process. I think that we need to do something like this too, because even after the zoning ordinance is approved, nobody is going to jump into the middle of the wine ghetto with a great big investment. They're going to want to see what's been working. And if we have a little bit of, if we start developing a little bit of experience, they'll know better what to do. Also, as we're finishing up the zoning ordinance, we'll know better what to do, what can be allowed there. So I think this would be really useful on both sides.
Thank you.
I have a question for him, Bob,
Sure.
if I could. Jack, it's a little confusing to me to see the wine industry group. Everybody wants food, but it's also, in your estimation, we see the property owner who doesn't seem to be on the same page, okay? Has that been an issue with any of that as far as full-service restaurants?
To say that, now that hasn't been an issue that has been addressed in depth. It may have been addressed in passing, but
I think he's been pretty consistent saying, he has a different vision of what he thinks food service would be, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But we are listening, and that's where we see that there's maybe it's not a lack of consensus in the wine industry people, like Tom Davidson said, but when you hear mixed messages from the actual property owner who's probably going to have to allow these uses.
I think...
Just wondering if that was a factor in anybody's decision making. Or should it be?
I think the decision at the Planning Commission was made because what was presented to us was the permitting process for the land use, as well as all of the health, safety, and infrastructure items. And I think the impression that was left with the Planning Commission was that, well, all of this work was going to be done and it was going to be paid for by the temporary use permit. And that was not the intention at all of anybody. I mean, the temporary use permit is a land use decision, and all of these health and safety issues are other issues that have to be met. So the position of the landowner in this case, I think, it didn't factor into my decision anyway. And my impression from the other members of the Planning Commission, it was not in their decision as well either. I think once we come up with a good workable plan, we can control what the landowner and the people that occupy those spaces do. But I think we need to come up with something that's workable. Otherwise,
Thank you.
that'll all be industrial again. It won't be wine.
Thank you. Are we still in public comment period?
Yes,
or what?
yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Mr. Bean when we get time to. Is that we wait till we bring it back to the council?
We'll bring back the
Okay,
council
thank
at
you.
that time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Robert Traylor. I'm a Lompoc resident. I'm also a member of the Economic Development Committee, and I have been for about a year. And the conversation after conversation, we are consistently talking about food in the wine ghetto. I don't think anybody questions whether or not that's a thing that everyone wants. And I may not speak with the eloquence of Mr. Pepe or the passion of Mr. Davidson, so I'll just say less expensive is better than more expensive. Sooner is better than later. And let the market speak. I remember attending the Economic Vitality Forum in late 2015, and one of the very top of the list that would be good for Lompoc is a business-friendly environment, and this is an opportunity. Please make the most of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Dan Kessler. I own Kessler Hawk Wines. We are located in the Zodovich building. A few observations just listening tonight. I think the TUP process, if you think about it given it by each business has to get their own, I think what we're really asking for, it doesn't really apply. I think what we're asking for is a temporary overlay on the ghetto as it's outlined, allowing restaurants to be in that area, and subject to all the normal approvals like a restaurant. Just like in a commercial zone, you can decide you want to put a restaurant in a commercially zoned property. Think of it like, now we're going to call this commercial. It's mostly mercantile anyway. I mean, it's mostly stores and stuff, right? You could certainly leave those in the commercial zone. My understanding was that a commercial kitchen could be put into the Zodovich building as long as they didn't sell food to the public. So if you can put all that infrastructure in there and it's temporary, but then all of a sudden somebody decides, well, we're not going to do that anymore, they still have the ability to turn that into a commercial kitchen or something like that where it can be loaned out to people or rented out to people and stuff. There's a very high demand for that for a lot of caterers and things like that, looking for a kitchen to do stuff with. My other question is there's a bread making facility in the Sabati, if I pronounce it wrong maybe, but that's been there for several years, and I'm wondering why that's allowed. I mean, they do sell bread out of there and things like that, but I mean, it looks like we're already doing that. Just a few points.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Alexandria Smith, and I am the tasting room manager for Powley Wine Company in the Wine Ghetto. But I also work 2 times a week in Santa Barbara in the Funk Zone at our Santa Barbara tasting room there. I'm just saying this from experience and being there twice a week. I'm there on Tuesdays. I'm also there on the weekends. Weekends are very busy. Tuesdays there are busier than our days in Lompoc. So I don't want you to think that it's crazy busy there when I've heard how big it's gotten. It hasn't. And while I'm there, I'm constantly trying to tell people to come to the Wine Ghetto. They ask where else they should go. And most of the time, they don't want to come to Lompoc. They want to go to Buellton. They want to go to Los Olivos. They want to go to Los Alamos. They want to go to Paso Robles because there's food, There's hotels very close nearby, and it's everything they can do in one. So it creates a place for them to stay. Very few will say, oh yeah, we'll go to Lompoc, and they'll come up there. But because of the fact that, number one, there's not a whole lot of attraction besides the amazing wineries that are there, people that are wine lovers will come for that. But it's very hard to have a tasting room open 7 days a week there as well. If there was food, any sort, no matter what way it happens, I'm not sure if that would require TUP or CUP, but if anything, it seems that the zoning definitely needs to be changed, and it needs to be done quickly to get people to come here. So I guess with that saying, being on both sides of it, there has to be something done. And if anything, if we're not going to do the TUP or CUP, the zoning issue really needs to be addressed soon. Otherwise, you probably are going to see people start to leave. I don't own a winery, but if I did, I might end up going that direction myself if it felt that the city wasn't on our side with it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council, staff. My name is Norm Yost, owner and winemaker of Flying Goat Cellars. I've been in the wine business for 35 years. The first 20 years I worked in Napa Valley, Russian River Valley in Oregon, and every time I saw food move into the wine industry or associated with the wine industry, I saw a synergistic effect of the whole community and the wine business grow and expand and financially provide jobs. So I'm hoping that Lompoc can move in that same direction, and it would be great to see something like that happen here soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Joey Gamer. I own Transcendence Winery. I've been in the wine industry for 20 years now, and the first 10 years was in Buellton, where I operated a winery. And basically what I would love, we're raising our kids here. We want Lompoc to be great, and we want Lompoc to compete with Buellton, with Los Olivos, with all of these places that are incorporating food with wine. We want to get the tourism here, and we want to get the people to stay here. And so I would please, whatever it takes, to have us be able to create an environment where people want to stay and people want to come to Lompoc. I did hear a lot of the arguments with, of the city being concerned with what people are going to spend on what it takes to invest, and I think that is for the investor to be worried about what their return is going to be. Wastewater was definitely a viable concern, but I think these buildings that we have, I don't think we're going to have a huge restaurant. We just want a place where people can come and they want to stay and have small bites of food or small dishes, and it would be wonderful for all of us that are in Lompoc to have that for our business and create that opportunity. I know for my wife and I, we're not leaving Lompoc because we live here and we're proud of it. But certainly if we weren't raising our kids here, I am frustrated right now that we can't have food, but I certainly would be considering my options of leaving the city if we can't have this changed and updated and move forward. So anyway, thank you. I hope we can work something out between the city.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, Council. I'm Kate Griffith, co-owner of Flying Goat Cellars. My husband and I've been in this community for 15 years and very active in the community, working with the city originally and volunteering on the Planning Commission. And my husband and I own residential property, we own commercial property here. We have a business that's contributing to the tax base of the city. So we're definitely invested in Lompoc. And we don't plan to go anywhere soon. And it makes me sad when I see other of our colleagues leaving or talking about leaving because of other opportunities in Buellton and elsewhere in the county. But unfortunately, I've had to sitting through the Planning Commission meeting and even tonight where I see the city staff bring in all these issues that really are not relevant to just the TUP, which is what the original issue is all about. And I think we just need to go ahead, approve food options with the TUP. And that doesn't mean that that's going to allow a restaurant, a full-size restaurant. That's ridiculous. We already know the process that you have to go through for full restaurant. A TUP would provide for a deli, a food truck, some of the less expensive or less investment types of food opportunities. So once again, I want to reiterate that we really need to allow a TUP. When I was on the Planning Commission allowed TUP for tasting rooms. Prior to that, it was just CUP, and then they allowed TUP, and all of a sudden, voila, we went from 4 tasting rooms to now 28 tasting rooms in the city. And, a lot of that was allowed for less of an investment in a tasting room. And that certainly hasn't been a disservice to the community or put too much strain on any aspect of the infrastructure. So please consider a TUP is not asking the world, it's just providing a temporary use permit for appropriate businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Okay, seeing no one rise, seeing 2 people rise, we're going to continue public comment.
Can I fill out a yellow form?
You don't, just tell her your name.
I'm Morgan McLaughlin. I am the Executive Director of the Santa Barbara County Vintners Association. I'm going to give you a broader perspective of where the wine and tourism industry is in Santa Barbara County and how Lompoc fits in. I think Tom Davison spoke about the urgency. The wine industry is moving at a rapid pace. What we are seeing now, and this was something that we discussed up in Paso Robles last week, is the barriers of entry and the barriers for business success in Santa Barbara wine country. That includes both the unincorporated areas and also within the city jurisdiction. SLO County sees about 1.5 million wine visitors a year. Santa Barbara County sees about 800,000. We had a 4-person panel last week that included SLO County, Sonoma County, myself representing Santa Barbara, and we were talking about the issues. Santa Barbara County and the municipalities make it very hard for the wine industry to be successful. The Wine Institute, which is the California State Wine Association, recently contracted with a research company to look at the California wine tourist and what compels that person to visit wine regions in California. What do you think the #1 thing, beside unique wine tasting experiences, that wine travelers search out? Culinary experiences. So the wine industry has repeatedly told folks within the city that we need culinary. You invest in tourism promotion through Explore Lompoc and the Lompoc Chamber of Commerce. In order to continue to be successful within the tourism sphere, wine being your #1 driver of tourism, you've got to have the culinary component. When we were at the Planning Commission, there was the discussion, is it a TUP, was it a CUP? And unfortunately, in the media, it made it seem like the wine industry didn't have consensus. The consensus is that the wine industry needs to see culinary options in industrial zones and the wine ghetto. It is the responsibility of the city to find a path forward. If you don't, you are not looking just at wine businesses moving to Buellton and other more progressive cities. We're looking at businesses moving out of the county. This is a very critical issue that needs to be addressed immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, Dwayne Holmdahl, resident of Lompoc, and a member of the wine industry ever since Richard Longoria put his plant in 1968. And the wine industry's been here. And I've heard a lot of the comments tonight from the wine industry, and I think they're all right on target. The council, and even though I said on it long ago, I could never get enough emphasis to get it moving until it let us to take that food out to the wine ghetto. We've got some hotels coming in that's going to bring people in, but they still want to eat. If they're going down to the ghetto, they got to go ahead and get something to eat. And we've looked at it. And now you're talking about another full year before the general plan is done, the layout of that. You've got to get something set up as soon as you possibly can, and let them start building in there. And just one little side, that sewer line that comes there, partially because it's too small, is that the hospital didn't put its $10 in there to make it big enough to take the sewage out of that area. So I think there's a lot of things that happened. The councils in the past have allowed happen. Now it's up to you now to go ahead and just get this wine industry up and going and make them happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Once? Twice? Okay, we're going to close public comment, and we are going to take a 5-minute break before we come back. Okay. going to bring this back to the council. And Councilmember Vega, you said you had one more question for, Mr. Bean may not be here.
Okay, if he's gone, then we're done here, but,
Okay. I'll do my best. Okay.
okay. Sewer line size, there's been two comments made that are conflicting. Does that sewer line, is it sectioned off in different sizes?
As far as I know, where we're talking about is a 6-inch line, but I'm going to go out there and check it this week just to confirm.
I think it's important that we do confirm.
Absolutely.
Because you know what, I think all of you guys are credible here, and it seems that if it's pieced out and somebody's measuring some other piece of it and the size does change, it'd be nice to know. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that we owe that to all the people involved, okay, to make sure we're not making more out of it than it maybe is.
You got it?
Okay.
So I don't want to speak for Mr. Bean, but I did ask Mr. Bean that question.
Okay.
And Mr. Sabani did put in, according to Mr. Bean, a 10-inch line, an 8-inch line, I'm sorry, an 8-inch line, but that 8-inch line flows into a 6-inch line, so there's, according to Mr. Bean, there is an 8-inch that flows into a 6-inch.
So we do have a little bit more somewhere.
Well,
is that one way to put it, Dirk?
Well, I
don't know.
guess it's sort of like the chain is only strong as weakest link. So if we have the 8-inch flowing into a 6-inch, in effect, it's...
Yeah, the 6-inch is going to be the restriction. So if the 6-inch is what the city owns, could be an 8-inch lateral, but that's owned by the...
If you wouldn't mind also, just to support this, Mr. Mayor, if we could listen to Mr. Sabani just for a second. I think it's really important.
Yeah, it is.
Okay?
So, Mr. Sabani, if you
Mr.
want
Sabani, if you wouldn't mind.
First of all, I have all due respect to you. I can imagine they're looking at this line 5 times a week, a month, 4 months, and they don't know the size of the line. So, I put an 8-inch line across my property. I'm not responsible to do this whole thing for the whole city. If city has 6-inch line, the 6-inch line, what he's talking about, when Lompoc Hospital, 70,000 square feet building was tied with all the thing they're discharging, city missed that point, did not require that. So how could you blame me for that? And that's above all, these people want to put a couple of sandwiches in the shop. Where's this thing coming up for? I'm just baffled. Really, you're not going to add anything to the sewer line.
Okay, so I think we've resolved that. Mr. Sabani does have an 8-inch line. It flows into a 6-inch line.
Patrick wants to speak here.
Patrick, Mr. Weinmiller, did you have something? Oh, did you have something?
I'm just that I didn't appreciate the comment towards staff, and if we can keep it to the issues, that's fine. If there's going to be an issue with any sort of attack towards staff, I'm going to ask my staff to leave. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, duly noted. Okay. Councilmember Mosby.
And I think Doran, who's not here, is the one that oversees that along with Gary Silbaugh. I think the purging of the lines, but that's theirs. I mean, he's the superintendent of wastewater, so that's, people. But I did look at the map yesterday, and Larry Bean has one in his office, and it diagrams there's Larry. A 6-inch is all the grid all the way, and it's a 6-inch that goes down all the way down. So, and there was a question that was brought forward to the Utility Commission about adding any capacity to that. I think there was an answer that came forward at the last Utility Commission meeting. Hit your microphone there. You can.
I don't recall talking about adding capacity. We talked about doing a capacity study on that line. So that line
There was a written questions that brought in 2 meetings before, and it was answered at last meeting in writing about capacities. I mean, I can answer it. I remember it said that you couldn't add capacity to there right now. You're full. It was asked if any food capacity could be brought in there. You guys responded no. So it was run through the Utility Commission meeting as well on this. So and I believe there's an 8-inch line on 12th Street. That was at that map?
The Zodafitch project was allowed to connect an 8-inch line that was required for their project or designed by their design engineers to a 6-inch line until they had enough funds to do all the required infrastructure.
Okay, then my question, thank you. I had a question for Lucille now. With a conditional use permit, they can do food service in that area, is that correct?
The Planning Commission has always said that they would certainly consider a conditional use permit to allow food service in that area, yes.
So there is a mechanism already to do this?
Yes, there is.
Is there a mechanism for somebody who wanted to do something very small, like some of the people have mentioned there, a deli? Would they need a CUP to put a small deli case in there?
They are currently allowed to have a refrigerated, small refrigerated case and sell food out of that, prepackaged food.
Okay, so there already is a mechanism for food in the area. It's not as elaborate as some people said. Now, a pizza oven, I think you need a Class 2 hood, I think, for a pizza oven. It's not as elaborate as a Class 1 grease fire hood, but there is a hood requirement for a pizza oven, if I remember correctly.
Actually, a
let's
pizza
keep
oven, if
comments
it's
down.
strictly wood burning, if there's clear enough vertical ventilation for natural convection to occur, it does not even require a hood in certain instances. It does have separation from walls and other combustibles, but no, it doesn't require a hood. We have 2 in the city already commissioned.
But they have to have elevation, because I know Kmart had to have a hood, and I had a pizza place in one of mine, I had to have a hood, so I guess some places don't, some places do, but.
If it's strictly wood burning and it's enclosed in a pre-manufactured, they're really cement, a lot of them are made in Italy, that controls all that heat. Now, if it's a pizza oven that's on a conveyor belt that the pizza's going and cooked by radiant heating, that does need a hood.
Or what are the old, the big conventionals like we see that the door opens?
That
Those
requires a
need
hood.
Okay.
A hood, yes, sir.
So depends what you qualify as a pizza oven. One of the reasons that we go through a CUP process is to ensure compatibility. And I can see that it is all over the map of what people want. There is an ability to have food service in there. But when people are wanting a full restaurant, some people are wanting a deli, some people are talking just about hamburgers, but I think hamburgers, unless it's prepackaged and then you're heating it in a microwave, right? You couldn't cook a hamburger there. Or is there a way that you could with electric little something, a panini press or something? Could you do something with a?
If you produce grease-laden vapors, you wind up in a hood type of situation. If you barbecue outside, you need just a permit to allow barbecuing on a regular basis through planning, and then some separation from non-combustibles along the wall. So it depends on how you cook the hamburger.
So could somebody, what kind of permitting process would need to put a barbecue outside?
If you're doing it on a permanent basis, then you need a conditional use permit because it's not a permitted use in that area. And we did present the idea of a wine overlay some years ago to the property owner for these types of uses to occur, but the property owner did not take advantage of moving that ahead. So when the zoning ordinance came forward, the council directed us, as was noted, to move forward with the sign ordinance first, which has been completed, and now we are in the process of moving forward with the rest of the zoning ordinance update.
Okay, and one of the items, and if you had a restaurant versus industrial, it triggers a number of items. One would be parking, and maybe you can help me. What is the different parking requirement of an industrial versus a? And let's say this, well, as some people said, there'd be a full-blown restaurant. I mean,
There's a number of different categories of industrial. If you were looking at an industrial manufacturing or warehousing, you're looking at 1 per 500 square feet, And for a 1,200 square foot operation, you'd need 3 spaces. For where we had just separate wine production and storage, again, for a 1,200 square foot site, it's 1 per 1,000, so you'd need 1 space. For sales and tasting, it's 1 per 350, so you'd need 4 spaces. So the use, whenever the use changes, our code requires that we look at the requirements for parking. And if we look at food service, a takeout, you're required 1 space per 60 square feet, which would require, in a 1,200 square foot, 20 spaces. For a regular restaurant, the calculation is for public accommodation and for back of the house, so you're probably looking at 14. So that the parking requirement does weigh into the evaluation of the use.
So as a restaurant, you would need a lot, it seems like a significant 3 to 4 times as much parking.
That's correct.
But again, I think what I've heard all over the place, what the food level is that people are looking for. Some people say let the market determine that, but you can't necessarily do that because you end up with chaos. That's why you have the big book like this to follow it. And again, I'm not quite sure what people are asking for food service and food preparation. And I think that's, again, what I think was Planning Commissioner Gonzalez said, is that there doesn't seem to have that level of consensus. And I didn't hear it again tonight. I know Mr. Sabani said you guys are making a big deal of it. This is, and I agree, the wine ghetto is a success for the city. But he says that you're making much more of it than what they're planning. And if somebody could just reference what they're doing, it looks like a lot of it can be done already. You're allowed to have the deli case in there. You're allowed to have a heat and serve operation. But if you're wanting to put a kitchen in, you can do that. You can potentially you can do it, go through the CUP process. So there already are mechanisms there. And to ask for a TUP process, where would, only in temporary, you could have a temporary barbecue, as you're stating there, with a TUP. But to have something that's a level of permanence, you need to try to go through the CUP process. And I think much like the Planning Commission, I don't think there already is a mechanism for food there in many aspects, in many ways.
Councilmember Osborne.
So despite the argument that there isn't consensus amongst the wine ghetto, I think what I am hearing is that there's a request to provide an opportunity for the market demand to be reflected immediately while we are in the process of providing an opportunity for food to exist in the ghetto. So rather than pretending to not know what you want, I'm going to make a suggestion. We need something that's between a TUP and a CUP. So we need something that's temporary until the zoning update exists. It doesn't mean that we carte blanche approve a full-fledged commercial kitchen that has all those requirements. I think what we need to do is return it to the Planning Commission with a few parameters about what that mid-level temporary use permit was. That's something that would be required for an annual renewal, that had a shorter checklist than a CUP requires, such as what is the standard for allowing food trucks on an annual basis? Do we allow a list of food trucks that have already provided their city business license, their county health permits, and where are they going to park on a regular basis, and what's the calendar like? Pay that permit once, and the food trucks can arrive based on the locations that have been designated and not have to show up for a weekly TUP or a daily TUP. Maybe it's making a list of things like a small deli, like the breadboard deli, where they all use electric plug-in things. They don't cook much. They are heating either an electric toaster oven or a pop-up toaster, or their equipment is not washable. It's all served on paper and tossed away or wiped down so that it doesn't cause a huge impact on the sewer lines. Maybe it's allowing the pizza ovens that are wood burning with certain parameters that if that's what you say you're going to do and you file the proper plans for it and go through the planning process that's going to be expected no matter what for what's happening in a physical location, then it's a checklist that makes it easier. Now, do we need to recover costs? Yes. Maybe it's not the cost of a CUP if there's a checklist of what those types of opportunities are, but if at least a parameter is set for a few of some of these not very large, not huge, not full-on sit-down white table restaurants exists, by the time the zoning update comes back to us, we'll know what the market demand is and be able to put an overlay or a proper ordinance in place. So I don't want to lose out on the opportunity, having been on the Economic Development Committee and knowing how long this discussion has been going on. I really do not want to see us ignore it one more time or say we have a mechanism, go through the CUP. That could take 8 to 10 weeks or 7 to 8 months, depending on the individual. I really want to find something in between that we send back to the Planning Commission. They can knock out in a month or two, come back to us, we sign off, and whoever wants to put food service within these parameters has a path to do that. So that would be my recommendation, is to fine-tune what that would be and send it back to Planning Commission for a checklist. They started, it was the industrial zone restaurant use application. I think it's a great beginning. It just needs some additional things done to it and maybe a new fee.
Councilmember Vega.
Was that a motion?
Well,
Discussion.
actually, Ms. Osborne, I agree with you, and if we look at the Planning Commission agenda, that's exactly what they're being asked to do. There's a resolution making the interpretation that the preparation and sale of food in the wine ghetto is within the intended purpose of the staff, issued a temporary use permit, and lists specific criteria for issuance of this TUP. That's exactly what the Planning Commission was being asked last time. So I would like to make a motion.
Could I speak?
Of course.
A couple of points. I'm remembering that we're here for a TUP, temporary use permit appeal. I'm going to quote Mr. Sabani from a few years ago, particularly October 27th of 2015. Prepared food, no food trucks, be dignified. Did I sound like you? The other is, I think the issue here is restaurant vice food service. I don't see restaurant as a compatible use in an industrial building with a change of use of building, etc. I get it, nobody's going to deep fry onion rings and do all this craziness in the wine ghetto. It would be wrong. We had a hard time getting a glass blower in there, so think about which direction we're going there. Realizing that the wine industry is going to be giving a survey by our zoning contractor, Lisa Wise, here very soon, your input is key on this. You will be the only people contacted in the wine ghetto for this. The input is going to be very important. So, I mean, this is your consensus time. The industrial use started out at 15%. I mean, it's kind of grown. I'm not sure how much food service, is it going to overtake production? Is it going to overtake the tasting? Is it compatible? It's something you're going to have to work out on that. Part of my concern would be what I consider the gifting of public funds. If it is true that we spend extra times, it's an enhanced area because of a wastewater line, if we have to pay out of the general fund because the TUP process doesn't cover the CUP, I can't support that. But if we could have staff bill on a TUP, and I'm going to put this on the shoulders of what Councilmember Osborne said earlier with special permitting here, I think that everybody would be willing to pay for the extra staff time to get what they want done in there, the fine line between a CUP and a TUP. The TUP, I think, I'm all for sending it back to the Planning Commission. I see it going this way, but I think some of the key important items on here is that it should be for a very specific time. It allows for update, change, if there's a variance, and the type of food that you're going to have in there. I mean, obviously, the discharge of water, grease, et cetera, is a big concern, and I don't see it going that way because nobody's going to want to invest that much money. Part of it will be the TUP would be to restrict the type of food. I think that would be important that you would have in there. I don't want to tell people what they can and cannot eat, but there are certain things, deep fried foods and et cetera, that are going to probably not work. The one of my back of my mind concerns that I have here is we've taken an industrial property and we've basically changed it to a different use. It is really not an industrial property. We've lost that. I'm concerned about the lack of industrial property in the city with zoning and all, and I think that as a council, when we start looking down the road at this, do we want to have a 40-acre wine ghetto on Central out here? We need to retain some of our industrial properties, our industrial uses, and probably just say, wine ghetto, you're going to eventually become a special type of district if the wine industry stays in there. But I'm probably in concurrence with everybody that, you know, we can return it to the Planning Commission for some specifics. I think we can draw some fine lines here. I mean, let's be at the front of this. Let's don't be looking at the back of it.
Okay, the comment on the gifting of government funds. This was an email that we all received from a planning commissioner, and it was only that planning commissioner's opinion. I did check with our city attorney, and he concurred that this was not gifting of government funds. So I think we can take that out of our vocabulary at this point. City attorney, would you comment on that?
Certainly, Mayor. The issue, as I understand it, was because there may be some city costs that they may not be covered by a process that could be considered a gift of public funds. That's not legally true. The council can always waive a fee if it wants to waive a fee or charge more of a fee as long as it's not more than the cost. So it wouldn't be a gift of public funds if the council set up a policy or process that didn't collect all of the costs that a city incurs by processing a permit.
Thank you. Councilmember Starbuck.
Well, I'll just reply. Maybe my term gifting of public funds was not the right thing to do, but I don't want the general fund to pay for figuring out how we're going to allow food and wine service together.
Councilmember Vega.
I have to agree, the path needs to be opened up for the ghetto, the wine ghetto, sorry. For food, I think it's, you know, to be business friendly, we have to do something here, so I have to agree with that. I agree with Planning Commissioner Rodenhigh that the path should be sent back to them, whether it's a zoning in between or an approval process in between the TUP and the CUP. I agree with Councilwoman Osborne, but at the very least, a TUP with guidelines and parameters that will allow you guys to be successful and all of us to move forward and give us a better reputation out there, okay, to say that we're going to open this baby up and come to Lompoc. Okay, I think that's probably what Explore Lompoc is, the Economic Vitality Group or Development Group, whatever you want to call yourselves. I think we're all on the same page together, okay? So that's what my consensus is. So that's where I would support that.
Councilmember Osborne.
Question for the city attorney. Given we're recommending a temporary use permit, and we could put a time frame on it, say a year, so they need an annual renewal supposedly until the new zoning was presented. Upon the receiving of the new zoning, these individuals who have a TUP, they would then be required to completely comply with whatever the new permitting process to become a permanent facility, correct?
Definitely when their permit runs out, or we could also add language to the temporary or to the permit that's issued that says it ends in a year or whatever time frame, but even if it doesn't, if the overlay zone or whatever the final rules are, you don't comply, you're going to have to comply with those.
Okay.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'd like to make a motion that we uphold the appeal, send back to the Planning Commission with the same recommendation they had last time, a resolution making an interpretation that the preparation and sale of food in the wine ghetto is within the intent of the intent and purpose of the staff issuing a temporary use permit, and list specific criteria for issuance of that TUP.
And I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on that?
Did you want to keep it as a temporary use permit, or did you want to maybe have the thought of a special use permit?
I think we're going to leave it as, I'm going to uphold the appeal. I want to uphold the appeal, and that would be a TUP with specific criteria. Councilmember Mosby.
Again, there already is a definition of a TUP. So you want to change the definition of a TUP. I think what Councilwoman Osborne said about something that's in between the TUP and the CUP. So you're not piggybacking on what we already have as a TUP. So if it's the modified use permit or whatever, I don't know if there's a ability to do something like that.
How about a food service use permit for the wine ghetto?
How about a food service use permit for the wine ghetto?
I didn't understand that one, Joe.
Is that a FUSUP? Is that a FUSUP?
Well, the motion that, or the motion that I made with the recommendation to uphold the Planning Commission, or uphold the appeal, that could all be interpreted into it.
What that motion would do would be that you would be then saying you agree that the current temporary use permit allows for the uses that you're talking about, because that's what the appeal was, because the Planning Commission said it doesn't, it needs a CUP. So I think to keep everything in line, I would suggest that you deny the appeal, but establish this workout plan that you want to send back to the Planning Commission, to have the Planning Commission come up with a in-between permit approach for the wine ghetto for food service.
I agree with
That's
that.
what I'm hearing, I think, from a consensus.
Councilmember Mosby.
That's ditto.
Yeah, and I agree with the food service, the use, whatever, what the heck did you say?
Food service use permit.
I think that's probably the direction we should go, Joe. What do you think?
Okay, so if, Councilmember Osborne.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Oh, is that a yes, you want to go in that direction, or yes, you're answering?
I would like to go in the in-between. So I agree that the process is to deny the appeal, but provide the recommendation back to the Planning Commission to create a food service permit for the wine ghetto with specific criteria that we send back to them saying it is temporary, meaning there has to be a renewal period within the year, annual renewals until the zoning update comes through, that it's specific types of foods that are being limited, it's the type of facilities that are being limited, and if there's a new fee that needs to be in between a TUP and a CUP, they assess what that is and make that recommendation to planning.
Okay, so I will withdraw my motion. Councilmember Vega, will you withdraw your second?
I will withdraw my second, and I can also give it another second. Can I do that?
Well, I need Councilmember Osborne to make a motion now.
Was that a motion, or what was that?
I am happy to turn that into a motion.
Wow. Now can I second it?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I second it.
Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, may I just ask a question?
You've already caused enough trouble.
I'm sorry. The timing of this, there's the Linda Weiss project that's going to be going forward. Do you want this to be in conjunction with that? Do you want this process to now take its own life and just, or what?
It needs its own life, because if we wait for the Lisa Wise project, that's part of the complete zoning update. So this they've already started. So by taking a look at the industrial zone restaurant use application checklist, they're almost there. So staff has already done some of the work, and I think with some of the input we've had tonight and some of the rules that already exist, we might be able to create something sooner rather than later that we could get in place so that the wine ghetto can have this, and if the market exists, it will drive it rather than waiting for that other part.
The other thing it'll do is, as a good friend of mine that used to sit up here said, it'll prevent kicking the can down the road.
Do we need a third or a second?
No, we
Joe,
don't,
on
no,
that? No,
so
okay.
we don't. Okay, so any further discussion? Let's vote on that motion. Okay. So hopefully that keeps some people happy. Okay, okay, good. Okay, now we need a glass of wine. Okay. Okay, written communications.
Nothing.
Oral communications, this is your opportunity to speak to us for up to 2 minutes on anything before the council. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close oral communication. We're going to move on to council requests, comments, and meeting reports. We'll start with Councilmember Vega.
Yes, I attended the Fireman's Fire and Ice Ball this weekend, and it was really nice. It was really nice. The area, the Sage Restaurant was very accommodating, and we enjoyed ourselves. As a council request, I'd like to request that we bring up an action item concerning the agenda as posted. I've asked before about possibly mirroring what we've seen with another city here in the county as far as adding additional information to the last page of the agenda, which would post committee and commission meetings at each and every meeting. So I think that would probably help the public. It would help us, and I think to give since we already made a move to try and condense most of our council meetings where possible to the council chambers, I think that would give them an additional tool of advertising to increase public support to some of these commission and committee meetings.
Okay, so if I understand you right, you want on our agenda to be listing, like when the Planning Commission, when the Human Services Commission, when those meetings are?
Yeah, there's another, Santa Maria does that already, so I'm basically just going by their format to another.
So it's just a line saying.
No, it's actually one extra page at the back of the agenda, and it lists all of them, all the commission and committee meetings for the month.
Okay. I'll need a second and third on that.
I'm just going to make a quick comment on it. I will give it a second, and that was part of the transparency meeting that we had.
Good, that's great.
Give a third.
Okay, so you've got a second and third, okay. Anything else?
No, thank you. That's
Okay,
it.
Councilmember Osborne.
I attended the Vandenberg Air Force Base Joint Chamber Luncheon. I attended the C3H meeting where we had our point in time report, and they will be coming forward to discuss that about how it's affecting our community. I represented Lompoc at Hannah Beth Jackson's Woman of the Year event down in Santa Barbara. I spoke as a woman in politics at the Lompoc-Vandenberg AAUW Women's History Brunch. I attended the Utility Commission meeting. I also attended Officer Grijalva's funeral. I attended the Recognition Grove dedication, as well as the Fire and Ice Ball. And just a reminder, tomorrow is the Empty Bowls event, so if you haven't gotten your tickets, you can still get them at the door. And finally, today is National Ag Day, so I just want to thank all our local ranchers, farmers, farm laborers, and manufacturers and researchers associated with it for all the hard work you do to provide us with the bounty that we have locally. So happy National Ag Day.
Thank you. Councilmember Mosby.
Yeah, I represented the city at the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments meeting, as well as the Air Pollution Control District meeting last Thursday. Another comment that's out there, I'm also, as people know, I'm the County Parks Commissioner for Peter Adam, and this coming Thursday at 9:30 in the morning at the Veterans Memorial Building, we'll be having a County Parks Commission meeting, and we're discussing fee schedules, and one is setting the fees for leasing and renting the memorial building. So people are interested, show up. Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the Beautification and Appearance Commission know that I received your annual report. Good job, and thank you for sending it to us.
Okay, and I also attended the joint meeting with the Chamber of Commerce at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and that was on March 8th. On March 11th, I attended the opening ceremonies for the Little League. On the 14th, I attended a Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. On the 16th, I had the pleasure of escorting or going along with the the temporary Mayor Lopez. And as we mentioned earlier, he had a great time touring our facilities. He also helped us present several of the Economic Vitality Awards to 3 of our local businesses. On the 17th, city manager and myself and assistant city manager, we participated in a panel discussion for Leadership Lompoc Valley here in council chambers. On the 18th, along with Councilmember Vega and Councilmember Osborne, we attended Arbor Day and presented proclamations to 4 very deserving members of our community. And I also, on that same day, attended the Firefighters Fire and Ice Ball. On the 20th, city manager and myself, we attended a Veterans Wellness meeting in Solvang. And there'll be more information coming forward with that. Basically what it is coordinating all of the efforts throughout Santa Barbara County on veteran affairs and veterans wellness, trying to coordinate them all into sort of one big bucket. So it's not, a veteran doesn't have to go to several different areas to try to find out what benefits are available to them. And let's see, with that, now I'd like to, well, I guess I don't really need to make a council request for this because I have the authority to do it. I'd like to arrange for a special council meeting. Several weeks, or 2 months ago, on one of my coffees, I had a specific council on homelessness. And out of that coffee, we realized that the same thing with the veterans issues, that there's a whole bunch of people trying to help the homeless here in the community, but it was not coordinated properly. So I am going to be calling for a special council meeting that we'll naturally have the employees here, or the residents here for, of the city. We'll get their input, and we'll try to facilitate a coordination of benefits and support for our homeless community, which we all realize, according to the paper recently, in the last one, has increased significantly in over the past years. So we need to do something about it. Now,
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
For the last 2 years, I've been representing the city on C3H. I know Councilmember Osborne is now, but that's kind of what C3H does.
Well, C3H is involved in this. They
want to have one here on top of it?
Yeah, they're involved in this.
Because you made a comment that people aren't coordinating, and I think they're doing a good job of coordinating there.
C3H admits that they do not have all the answers, and there's breaks in the communications. They were involved in both my meetings. I was involved in another meeting with them today, and they all agree. As a matter of fact, Jeff from C3H is sort of took the lead on getting information for this meeting, so they are involved in it.
So another question is,
Yeah.
and we're going to come up with some type of policy at this meeting then?
We're going to have a meeting, get more information, and we may not come up with anything, just get some ideas, and we're not going to, the city is not going to be taking the lead on this. We're just going to help coordinate and get additional ideas from the community. So it'll be a council.
So we're going to have a meeting that we're going to facilitate, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, okay. And that will be, I'm going to give you 2 possible dates, so if you can save the dates, because I still have to get together with Jeff, who's coordinated for me with C3H, on 2 different dates. We are looking right now at April 11th and April 25th. So April 20, okay, you're right, it's going to be April 11th then. You know what, wait a minute. It may be May. It is, I'm sorry, scratch that. May 9th and May 23rd. Those are the 2 dates that we're looking at. Thank you. May 9th. No, May 2nd is a council meeting. Yeah, so save those dates for, it'll be May 9th or May 23rd. Okay, then this is a council request. I know Councilmember Mosby, as our representative for SBK, has been working very hard on this, but if you all read the newspaper recently, the widening of the 101 down south has been delayed, and I'd like to sort of give the support to Councilmember Mosby, not that he needs it, he's doing a very good job on SBK, but the support of this council requesting that he ask SBK to divert $30 million to meet the urgent needs of this area. For instance, the Robinson Bridge, some of our other areas right here. the delay in the South County, they're delaying the 101 widening, and it could be another couple of years before they do it. So just like we did in Santa Maria with SBCAG, they diverted some money, and Santa Maria has the beautiful bridge there. And now again I think it's either Solvang or Buellton, they diverted some of the money for some projects up there. So if we can get support from this council to ask Councilmember Mosby to have $30 million diverted.
And it's not agendized items, so I don't want to go into length of discussion, but they don't have the same mechanism that they had on those other projects, but we're already trying to get it through the SHOP funding to get part of this, but there's not a mechanism to divert $30 million anywhere, but I'll pose the question. I don't have any
they
problem
were
with
able
that
to do
either.
it with Santa Maria, the Santa Maria Bridge. They were able to divert some money. So whatever it takes, it's just taking too long for them to realize that Lompoc has some needs as well. So, and Councilmember Mosby, I know that you've been working very hard on this issue.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm trying to figure out, because what we're doing is, and I guess I can give an SBCAG report, if I can go back to that, is that they had moved it. It was scheduled for 2032, 2034, with Measure A funding. I mean, you have to have a funding mechanism to get money. And then they were looking at moving it down to 2036, 38, with the potential for SHOP funding and the scour analysis, which the city engineers have assisted me with to get this moved up to 2022 potentially to replace on that. But there has to be a funding mechanism, and there isn't a surplus of Measure A funds or anything else. I mean, I'll pose the question, but you usually have to have a plan to pose a question.
The money is currently being set aside for the 101 widening, which they keep delaying.
Well, and as you're aware, is when they did Measure A, there was a separation of dollars. There was North County Measure A and there was South County Measure A. So that's South County's bank, and the delay is because of the environmental analysis and review, and they're moving forward with that. So there isn't that's South County funds. It's not North County, so it's not a pool of money that we could dip into.
So,
Mr. Mayor, we're
yes.
starting to get into the discussion.
Okay,
that's
yeah, so
on the
all I'm
agenda
doing
for.
is I'm asking the council, I need a second and third to support Mr. Mosby on figuring out what we need to do to get some of that money down here, or up here, so. I need a second and a third on that.
I'll give him a second.
Yeah, I think maybe we get Councilmember Mosby give a little report on that. Sounds interesting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.
Excuse me, Mayor, we
Yes.
held over an item I had on my report to hear about your meeting dates. So back to trying to establish
yes.
the transparency meeting date for the ad hoc, which sounds like it's going to be Mr. Vega and Mr. Mosby. Would April 25th be a good date for you two?
You're in Washington. Oh, you won't be there, yeah.
Okay. And we'll schedule that for April 25th. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And with that, this meeting is adjourned to a regular city council meeting at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 4th. Thank you and good evening.